Welcome back, everyone, to the Sporting Chance podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Mountain State Falconry Supply.com, your home for your micro hawking needs.
What's up, guys? If you're anything like me and you like braided equipment, leashes, jesses, there's no better place than MidnightFalconry.com. Richard Moats puts a lot of effort into the finest, tightest braids that money can buy.
Listen, folks, now's the time. Heck, it might even be too late. Check out North Mountain Goshawks to secure your hunting partner for, inshallah, next season, but possibly the season after. We'll let the conversation go and see where it takes us. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll warn you guys, I can be a little long-winded on some of this stuff because I get kind of excited about it, but I'm curious.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I'm curious what made you guys decide to give me a call and want to have a chat.
Well, I saw on Facebook one of your posts were suggested to me.
Oh, yeah.
And it was your hack tower. And then I reached out to Casey and said, Casey, contact him because Casey's verified. So messages come through easier.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it'll prioritize him. And then we were talking to Lou Souter last week, and he actually coincidentally also mentioned your name.
Okay. Cool.
So, yeah. But basically it started with a suggested post of your hack tower.
So it was the hack tower that got your interest.
Yep.
Isn't
Yeah,
that a thing of beauty?
Oh yeah, that's super cool. It's we're into people that are going above and beyond and doing more than the norm, you know, and
Sure.
The dedication to building a hack tower and doing that that's way more than most people are willing to do.
Yeah.
So we figured you'd be somebody really interesting to talk to.
Sure.
Now,
sure.
Is there anything, because we don't know you, is there anything we should talk about? And not, you know, I think Casey told you, don't worry about sounding braggadocious, but how would we know if you were attacked by a grizzly bear or wolves or something like that? So
yeah, that's
is there anything
fair.
like that?
Yeah. I'd love to tell you I have that level cool stories, but you know, most of my falconry and the work that I'm doing at the moment, which is where I get to do all this hacking stuff, it's not terribly remote. It's not terribly risky. We don't see the kind of stuff that goes bump in the night that you might hear about guys talking about snowshoe hare hawking in this part of the world in the wintertime. But I've had some really unique experiences here when it comes to raptor stuff, and that's some of the stuff that you guys probably want to hear about. There's some really cool stuff to be learned with a lot of the hacking I've been fortunate enough to be a part of over the years, because we do some kind of unconventional things here. So there's probably some stuff that I've done in the last 15 years that no one would ever think to do when they're hacking birds, because there's usually a pretty definitive purpose, but I've been given a fair amount of latitude with some of my hack stuff. And then even in the goshawk stuff specifically, that's all under my own power. So nobody's kind of overlooking what I'm doing. It's really up to me to decide what angles to approach that whole thing from. So that's been a really cool experience too. That's
cool.
I've hacked a lot of birds in my lifetime, but the goshawk hacking is fairly new. I haven't even been breeding goshawks terribly long, but to be able, like,
and you're a falconer as well.
Oh yeah. I've been a falconer for more than 30 years. I was born in Ontario. I grew up out east. I was born in Toronto, grew up in Southern Ontario, flying red tails and Harris hawks at squirrels, rabbits. I did a lot of car hawking with kestrels and stuff like that when I was in high school. When I graduated high school and I was looking at post-secondary options, I had a friend that had moved to Ontario from Alberta, and he was talking about coming out here to go to school. And he said it was, Lethbridge, where I live now, is a great little party town, good college town. And I started kicking around the idea of moving west, learning a little bit about what was outside of Ontario. And when I brought up Southern Alberta to a couple of falconer friends who had a little more experience with the rest of Canada, they kind of lit up and said, like, you're going to longwing country. I still had no idea really what it was all about. And when I moved, it became clear pretty quickly. So I've lived in Lethbridge for 24 years now. And like I said, it's predominantly longwing country. It's big ag, lots of upland game, ducks. But I can't shake the goshawk, the love for goshawks. That was really ingrained in me early on when I was flying short wings out east.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Are you a Tragically Hip fan, Steve?
I'm not a huge music guy, but I'm well aware of the Tragically Hip. Yeah, they're iconic here across Canada. I'm a Jays fan. Hold on a sec.
Every Canadian guest you ask that question, Aaron. I realized
probably more like it. Can we do that?
There we go.
What is that?
Blue Jays.
Is that hockey or some shit?
Oh, give me a break. You're not a baseball fan?
Baseball? You mean snoring, sleeping?
I know. I'm
taking a nap.
I'm old school.
No, I'm biased towards baseball because I was a really good pitcher as a kid, and the town I grew up in was real small, and the coach that was like the main coach, he wanted his what turned out to be drug addict, alcoholic son, but at age 11 or 12 to be the pitcher and get a scholarship, so he wouldn't let the weird homeschool kid with all the pets pitch, and he let me pitch the last inning of the last game of the season when we were losing and our team lost like the entire year. I struck everybody out, and then he wanted to be my best friend. I told him to off to his face.
I had a similar thing with baseball and skiing. You mentioned being the weird kid with pets. Falconry ruined sports for me. It didn't ruin them for me, but as far as taking the sports to a higher level, falconry totally roadblocked me on that one. I stopped competitive skiing, competitive baseball. And it just took over my life. I'm not complaining.
What kind of skiing? You're doing the slaloms or?
Yeah, a little bit of everything, all kinds of downhill.
The moguls, the slaloms.
I love
the half
little
pipe, the vert.
I loved having air between my skis and the ground. That was my thing. I love being off the ground.
I like that.
Casey, as a young man, were you also an incredible skier?
No, I sucked at skiing, and I sucked at snowboarding too.
Whenever a sport comes up, Casey was incredible at it when he was a kid.
I know guys like that.
Like what other sport, Aaron? Like what other sport?
Oh, last week swimming.
Yeah, swimming. Yeah, that was like my main. That was like my main sport.
Are you a great soccer player this week?
I was a good soccer player as a kid too. My mom coached the whatever our little league was, and she coached us, and I was nasty. Awesome. And my brother was on travel team, and he's 4 years older than me, and I used to play with him and his friends. So naturally, you get good, Aaron.
I saw a funny meme about homeschool, and it said, "Homeschool? Oh, you mean trickle down stupidity?"
Trickle down stupidity. Yeah, sure.
How long have you guys been doing this podcast? Have you guys known one another longer than you've been doing the podcast?
Too long. Too long is the answer.
Oh, nice.
We're on year 3 of the podcast, and we've known each other probably 6 years or so, Casey?
At least, like Facebook and stuff and chatting, at least.
Yeah, right on. And you guys are both flying. I'm sorry, I don't want to take over, but you guys are both flying.
No, take over. Enjoy.
You're both flying Goshawks, or?
Yes. Yeah. Well, Aaron's got like a little everything. He's got like a Harris Hawk. He's got 2 red tails. He's got a Goshawk. Got like a screech owl. He's got a parrot. He's got a radiated tortoise colony.
Wow.
I got a little of everything, but this year the primary hawks are going to be Tiercel Goshawk and one of a couple red tails.
Are you guys with your Goshawks? Are you imprint guys or non or little bit of both?
I love imprints. They're my favorite.
Yeah, my most successful goshawk, and really the only goshawk I ever really got to hunt, was a parent reared bird.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Last year my imprint died on hack.
Oh no. What happened?
Killed by a red tail. Mm-hmm. And then this year I'm hacking this Tiercel, which I said I wasn't going to, but it just it's like I told my.
He was like, "Yeah, I'm hacking today," and he just flew away. I was like, "All right, I guess this is what we're doing now."
Some of those work great. Some of those are the best. Those impromptu hacks, you learn a lot from those.
Yeah, he accidentally spent the night outside one night and flew up into a tree, like the first time he was ever out in the open air. unrestrained when he could fly, and flew up into a tree, and he got overwhelmed, and it was getting dark, so he stayed the night outside. And then the next day I was like, well, he survived last night, so I might as well just hack him.
Do you live in an area where horned owls are an issue?
They're here, but they're not very common. We have more barred owls than we do great horned owls. Mm-hmm. And I was telling Casey yesterday my theory, and I know it's not a perfect theory, but I think that if there's barred owls, you probably don't have a whole lot of great horned owls.
I think that's safe.
I would assume that the barred owls would get smoked if they were great horned owls.
Yeah, or they wouldn't be terribly visible. You know, they could probably sneak in and out of there, but they're not gonna be breeding. So if you have local breeding barred owls, you probably don't have horned owls.
Yeah, as loud as those things are, you just cannot imagine that if there's a great horned owl around, that it would not come in and eat them every chance they got.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
But so yesterday I drove up to the hack site, and there was a juvenile red tail, looked big, so it's probably a female, flying around food begging. Mm. And considering last year my experience with that red tail, I was like, man, this cannot be a good idea to put him out here with this.
How old is the bird now? Like how many days roughly?
Ooh, good question. It's hard pinning right now, like days. It's in the last days of hard pinning. 55,
60 days. So you're still in that window where they do the most remarkably stupid stuff at hack. I went up to my hack tower yesterday. I had to open a box full of peregrines yesterday, and I needed to just sort of inventory everybody that's already out, goshawks included. And I'm walking around in the woods looking for my goshawks, and it's like the greatest game of Where's Waldo you can imagine. Like looking for these things it's super hard to find them. And your normal search engine that you've probably developed over the years for looking for goshawks that are out in the woods is you're looking pretty high up. You kind of look for them out in a more obvious place because they're usually looking for something themselves. But these baby birds, they go into a complete hiding mode. I mean, their number one defense against predation is crypsis. Like their plumage is it's never more obvious why a goshawk looks the way it does than when you try to find them in the woods. And I'm walking around yesterday looking, and it's just one of these moments you experience when you're hacking birds where you go, they're gone. Something's dead. Somebody's killed them. Something's come through and ruined it all because you're not finding them. And you take another step, and this little goshawk flushes off the ground like a grouse, just laying there in the sun, having a good time underneath the hack tower, totally invisible. You're not looking there because why would a goshawk ever be laying on the ground in the middle of the woods? And it makes you wonder. They have to do it in the wild, and why can they get away with that? Well, in the wild, mama bear is always there. There's always a female, and sometimes the male's present. At that stage, those birds are never going to have anything get anywhere near them that could pose a threat. So you through the hack process, this is just one example of the many things that you get to see that they would do in the wild, and you really kind of have to process like how does this even work? And my experience breeding goshawks has been that I catch myself often remarking, I don't know how these things ever manage to do it in the wild. I don't know how they do it 80 feet up in an aspen with the rain and the wind and the hail and the predators, and yet they still manage to do it. It's just the most remarkable thing to witness. But you develop a quick appreciation for why it's not uncommon to go to a wild goshawk nest and find it vacant, find nobody there, find adults that have failed, remains of young that are killed. There's so much out there that can happen to them. So what I was getting at with your imprint, to come back to it, is another week or two, and you're not going to see the kind of stuff that makes them vulnerable to red tails. They go through a rapid evolution through life experience at hack, from being these total dummies, these complete idiots that will lay on the ground in the middle of the woods in the middle of the day, to birds that are pretty capable of keeping their head up and watching for what might be coming.
So if you had to guess, Steve, what do you think the scenario was with Aaron's bird last year? Like a 1,400 gram. Go ahead, Aaron.
Let me lay the groundwork for what so Steve knows.
Okay.
But before I do that, ladies and gentlemen, we're joined today by Steve Schwartze. Steve is a falconer, and I'm just going to call it an expert hacker in Canada.
That could be.
Thank you for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
He's just hacking into the mainframe of falconry right now.
Yeah, there you go.
And for those of you who don't know, hacking is taking a captive-born bird of prey and kind of giving it unsupervised time in the wild to different degrees. So right now with my goshawk, I wake up in the morning, I take it to the hack site, put telemetry on it, release it, and then I come back at the end of the day, and that's called a tame hack. But Steve does a lot more than that, and we'll get into it. But Steve, what Casey was asking, last year I had a Ural Mountain Butioides goshawk female. Mm-hmm. Big bird, like he said, about 1,400 grams. I was hacking her at an industrial site that was vacant. There were trees and brush and grass, so I'm sure there were squirrels and rabbits. And of course, redtails occupy every square inch of territory here on the east coast of the United States. I don't think you could go anywhere that doesn't belong to a resident pair of redtails.
Sure.
Right. And everybody's, the collective experience down here was that redtails aren't a problem for a juvenile goshawk. Is that the predator that you're most worried about on the East Coast is a great horned owl, and that's generally only going to happen at night if the bird stays out at night.
Yeah.
So my bird was on hack for 3 weeks probably, and one day I checked it. I drove by and I didn't hear it screaming, and I turned on the GPS and I could see it was in a stand of woods, and I just left it there and then continued on. I didn't want to walk out and bother it. Mm-hmm. Then I came back at the end of the day and it hadn't moved, and I get there and there's a pile of feathers on the ground, and it's laying there with its crop ripped out and its head gone, and a red-tailed hawk is territory screaming in the background.
Yeah.
Not too far away, just on the other side of the trees, screaming at me.
Yeah.
I came back the next day to the same location just out of curiosity to check it out. And the red tail was territory screaming again the next day. So my assumption is a red tail hawk killed it.
Yeah, that sounds probable. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your theories for a bird that's hard pinned, hasn't been hard pinned too long? Big bird, so as big as your biggest red tail. What do you think could have happened?
Yeah, I mean, based on what you've told me, it's not going to be a juvenile red tail that's territory screaming unless it's a bird from the year before. So it's some territorial, more mature red tail, likely an adult. And frankly, if you're going to hack young raptors into an existing territory that's occupied by some type of wild raptor, you're going to pay some sort of tax. It's just a fact. And if you happen to unknow, I'll go back to my own hack site and some issues with that. But if let's say, I don't know the scenario, but based on what you described, if you happen to be hacking your goshawk unknowingly into an occupied red tail territory, it's no longer does the bird enjoy the benefit of what I just described earlier before we started recording, that they reach a point where they're street smart enough to avoid things like predators. And a mature red tail can kill a young goshawk just by biding its time and picking that moment of opportunity. So while you're describing your young male that's at that 55 to 60 day old period where he's clumsy and awkward and does stupid things, and he'll grow out of that, they can only grow up so much and still be defensible against a red tail that wants to kill him, that's territorial. So you're dealing with a pretty serious adversary there. It's not all that different from horned owls. If you set up in an active horned owl territory, you're going to feed your young to the horned owls. It's that simple. I've done
even during the day.
That was my first experience with hacking was with peregrines back in 2004. A friend of mine bred a few, and he and a couple friends pooled together some birds, and we decided to just do a wild hack out of his barn. And this was a farm property in an intensive agriculture area where horned owls become concentrated because they'll move to these farmyards. That's where the cover is. That's where they can breed, and there's often food opportunities. A pair of horned owls that are territorial will come through a hack site and clean everybody out in no time. It's almost a little bit sickening to experience. However, that can be used to your advantage, not territorial horned owls, but just to give you an example where I'm sitting right now, I'm in a house that belongs to some friends of mine. They've been my very gracious hosts for the last 15 years while I've hacked peregrines as a part of our sort of lagging reintroduction efforts here in Alberta. We're one of the few jurisdictions in North America that still on paper does not have a recovered peregrine population. They probably are there, if not, at least very, very close. So this sort of thing has run its course. But for the last 15 years, I've gotten to hack peregrines here. And I can tell you this, there's nothing more beneficial to your hack site than a territorial adult raptor, if that raptor is not a threat to your hack birds. So to give you a more current example, the hack tower, Aaron, that you mentioned, you spotted on my social media here recently. I built that hack tower across the river from me on a property that belongs to another friend. And through the course of building that tower, which just took me a couple hours to whip it up and put it together, I thought I've picked about the best spot in the woods I could. It's not the first time I've hacked in that patch of forest, so I'm kind of familiar with the spot. But it was my first day here this year. And just as I'm putting the final touches on the hack box, right over my head, I hear this. There's a merlin nest in a tree right over my head. She's about 60 feet up in a spruce tree. Hadn't moved the whole time I was building the tower. And now I've got the tower built. And I'm going, well, what do I do? Is this going to bother her? Is this going to affect the hack? And the reality is, in hindsight, now that I've opened, the birds have been in there, I've opened the box, they're flying around, we've had our interactions, and I kind of know how it all is going to go. That female merlin is probably the best asset that I have for pulling off a hack without risk of predation from other, raptors, foxes, whatever it happens to be. Nobody moves out there without that female merlin doing something about it. And that's probably what you experience with your goshawk at hack if there was a resident pair of red tails there, is they probably, not much goes on without them having some say whether it's allowed or not. And unfortunately for your goshawk, that was a breach of their rules,
Do you think that a nesting pair of red tails is more or less tolerant of another young bird that's obviously a juvenile that's food begging?
I think they're totally intolerant. If they have any reason to believe that's not their own young, and it's in the case of hacking young birds, like I've hacked imprints among wild hack birds while there's a resident pair of peregrines present, and the imprint doesn't interact with those adult peregrines in a way that they're familiar with, so they see it as an intruder. They see a young peregrine. It looks just like their own offspring that are flying around, but it doesn't follow them. It doesn't food beg when they get close. So they look at it and go, this thing's just not treating me the way that I'm familiar with. I don't like it. I'm going to assume something's wrong, and they'll drive them off, and they can be pretty nasty to them. So if your goshawk looked different enough to a red tail, sounded different enough to a red tail, no doubt an imprint goshawk that you're hacking is not food begging at adult red tails. That might be all it took for them to decide, let's just kill this thing, get it out of the picture, and then we don't have to worry about it. That's the world they live in.
You think they killed it together?
That's a great question. Wouldn't surprise me, but I'm sure an individual adult red tail is capable of killing a female goshawk, a young goshawk especially. Yeah.
I was talking to Paul Aaliyah yesterday about that situation, and I think that a female red tail is more physically powerful than any goshawk. So if it comes down to it and they're both crabbing, the female red tail is going to come out on top, I would assume.
I think there's also a component of just mental maturity, right? I mean, if you or I went and picked a fight with a 5-year-old, the fight's over before it starts, right? And that your goshawk is essentially, while it might have some physical power, it might be somewhat mobile by the time it's hard penned and has been at hack for a little while. That red tail might be 15 years old, and it's seen and done everything that goshawk could throw its way. So it's kind of a hopeless pairing, if you ask me.
So what do you do when you make the assumption that everywhere you go, there's going to be red tails that live there?
That's the challenge. There are going to be places that hacking is just not an option. It's just too dangerous. And again, something I've been very fortunate to have the autonomy to do is experiment a little bit and endure a little bit of loss without it being a total deal breaker. I understand for a falconer who, especially, you have to invest some money to acquire a goshawk unless you're making them in your own backyard. And it's a big purchase for a lot of people. And it's especially disheartening to rear an imprint, do a good job with all the excitement of the prospect, only to have it just flattened like that, just totally squashed in one day. So it's easy for me to say, well, you're just going to have to incur some loss if you're going to liberate a bird at hack. Easy to say, a little bit harder to hear. But arguably the best thing you can do is establish some presence on that property before you do your hack, and know who's there beforehand, know who's around. And if you have a property that has even some loose red tails on it, some territorial adults, maybe they have young, maybe they don't. But if you're seeing that they're intolerant of other red tails around, for example, or they're even screaming at you when you happen to walk through their territory, that's a bad sign. And you're probably setting yourself up for some problems. We're really lucky here. Red tails, I hear folks talk about red tails lots. I'm very familiar with them from flying them out east years ago. We don't deal with them as being a real killer of falconry birds here, because our red tails leave the province before they become that type of predator. Our red tails here are living the life of Riley before they leave the province, before they really get on migration. They're eating voles and they're eating mice and everything. It's kind of the land of plenty. And then when they get down to some of the lower 48 states and they experience the harshness of winter, they can become just crazy super predators. And we hear about guys down in Texas, Oklahoma, some of these states with a lot of winter and red tail populations having big birds like female peregrines and hybrids killed on quarry. That's just something you hardly ever experience here. So we don't think of red tails when it comes to hacking as being a big risk, but I can absolutely appreciate where you guys live. That is something to be considered. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my defense, that place didn't seem, that was the first bird I've ever hacked. Mm-hmm. And it didn't seem like a particularly dangerous place to me. I saw red shoulders. I definitely saw a kestrel. I saw a Cooper's hawk. I think I have definitely trapped juvenile red tails in that area, but it's an area that they would kind of naturally find themselves in. There's probably a lot of rodents and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it's easy to take away the feeling that you learned a lesson the hard way, but I feel confident saying that you could just as easily hack the next goshawk in that exact same spot and not have that problem. These problems are pretty unpredictable. They're going to happen here and there, and you do your best to learn from them if you can. And a lot of the time, in spite of your best efforts, you've done everything you can do. Stuff happens, stuff happens.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't say that you need to excuse yourself for picking that spot. It might be a great place to hack a bird, and you just happen to have some poor luck that time around.
Now, I was telling Casey yesterday on the phone, people probably would have said, man, you are an idiot for putting out your bird where that juvenile red tail was food begging. Yeah. And I didn't do that. I went to a different location.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday.
Yeah.
So yesterday when I pulled up with my tiercel and there was that juvenile red tail food begging, I just picked up and went 10 miles down the road and went somewhere else with him for the day.
Well, is that what you're doing? Is you're hacking them where you see fit and on that particular day, or you don't have one devoted hack site necessarily?
No, this was supposed to be my devoted hack site, but I just could not in good conscience cut him loose in that spot with that red tail flying around.
Got it. Yeah, I got you.
And I could imagine if I had, because, you could think through it logically and go, all right, well, it's a juvenile red tail. It's not going to be capable of, predating on this juvenile goshawk. It's a dumb baby bird, just like this is a dumb baby bird, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you think, okay, well, if it's flying around food begging, the parents very well may be around here, unless this bird is dispersed and now he's just now starting to,
Yeah. It's not that young red tail you have to worry about. That bird's not hunting.
Exactly.
It might be food begging. It might give you, in the short term, the impression it's starving to death. But you don't have to worry about that bird until its parents stop feeding it. And you're not hacking a young goshawk in that window. So it's unlikely to be a predatory act from a juvenile red tail on a territory. It's the adults. And those adults might even see your goshawk. Was it an unusual? I mean, it probably doesn't matter what it looked like. They can tell a goshawk from a red tail. And that matters more than anything. they might have seen your goshawk as a threat to their offspring, and that could be all it takes, you know?
Right. It was a big white bird too, so it's not
the one that was killed.
I don't think that helps. I don't think that helps anything. We can talk about white goshawks. We can get into that, but I think they're white where they're white for a reason. From an evolutionary standpoint, there's a reason we don't have white goshawks in North America. It just doesn't do anything.
Allegedly, we might.
Well, sure, maybe some spillover across the Bering Strait. I don't know, but as far as where you're hacking your goshawks, what else in that area is white and flies? You know,
cattle egrets.
Yeah, stuff that raptors eat.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I had the same thought about that.
Yeah.
Before we move too far away from that, you had mentioned the camouflage of a juvenile goshawk earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's something I've never considered, is why juveniles are the color they are, mm-hmm. and why they molt into a different plumage when they get older.
Yeah.
So you think it's for camouflage?
Oh, it's 100% for camouflage. And, you look at it, I always get real excited. Every year when I produce my young of the year and they start feathering out, I start to get a look at them and see what they're gonna look like. I produce a little variability of color, which is kind of cool to me. And you look at a goshawk, a juvenile goshawk, on a boat perch on a green lawn, or you look at it against a brown fence or a white building or something like that, and you go, man, they're just so boldly patterned. They're so striking that it's almost obnoxious. And then you put them in the forest and they just disappear. The light highlights in the back of a juvenile goshawk, you put them up in a tree and it looks like light shining through the bird. That crypsis is no doubt a huge part of their survival tactic in their first year. And especially when they're vulnerable at that age where they're still dependent on parents, and the parents are, often quite busy just hauling food in and out to try to keep everybody satiated. They have to be cryptic. They have to be able to hide from predators.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because the underside of a goshawk is the adults is basically white, it's light colored, and the top is dark. Yeah. So if you're looking up against the sky, even on an adult, that's camouflage.
Now, there's that factor, and there's also something that becomes very obvious when you spend time around breeding raptors in the wild. Especially, it's very obvious to me with peregrines. Peregrines will broadcast their presence by showing that white front. The terrestrial peregrines, especially, will see this sort of resurgence of genes in the late summer, say late August, early September, where the photo period is matching the photo period in the spring that initiates the breeding behavior in that pair. So the males their gonads swell, they start to get a little hormonal again, and they actually get quite pushy with their own offspring on a territory. But at any given time, you can find those adult males perched in a very prominent place with the sun hitting their chest, and you can see them from miles away. Goshawks aren't any different, even though they live in the woods and they're not quite as visible as a peregrine that lives in more open country. That fairly obvious lighter colored chest is a matter of display, I think, at times as much as anything else. And of course, for a mature raptor, crypsis isn't nearly as important as it is for a juvenile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense.
I would think it would be camouflage from prey.
Maybe that's a factor. Maybe that color helps at times in hunting. I mean, you look at an orca or a great white. You can look at other examples in nature that have similar patterns, and wonder, that's another super predator. Maybe that's an advantage for hunting. That's a good question.
Yeah, but even like bait fish and stuff, they have the same. That's always light on the bottom, dark on the top, like 90% of the time.
It is camouflage, no doubt. There's some camouflage component there, but there's also a display element when it comes to mature raptors. For sure.
It's an interesting. I just assumed it was always camouflage. I mean, when you like your red tail catches a squirrel and kind of like coasts off with it, you're a goshawk and it's a juvenile. It's like impossible to find them in the forest floor. It's so obnoxious. That's why the whitebirds come in handy. That's why it's if you go from flying a whitebird to then flying a juvenile, standard, I guess I don't even call it brown bird.
Standard issue.
Like your eyes you can't, like, it's so much easier. Like the whitebirds, it's so much easier. Just look for the white spot in the woods.
Sure. There's also an energetics component too. I mean, the amount of energy it takes to produce the melanin that creates color in plumage. If you live in a place like if you're a gerfalcon living on Baffin Island up in the high Arctic, or you're a white goshawk living on the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia, where vegetation isn't really all that abundant, you live in open country, you don't need dark colored plumage to provide camouflage. And that's why you see in those cases, even juveniles that are white, like your white goshawks. So there's that. There are a lot. I think we have a tendency to try to focus on one thing or another being the reason something exists in nature. It could be a sort of collection of different factors that are contributing to the plumage.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I mean, because every now and then you'll see a mutation with red tails, pop up on birding groups, and you may see one. I got a pied red tail in my town that I got some cool videos of. He's got like white talons and stuff too. He's cool.
Oh, neat.
And yeah, he's super crazy looking. But like, I could see how if that mutation popped up in a place like Alaska or, Russia, I could see how that genetics like would get pushed because that bird would survive and do better. And like, I don't know if the albidus comes in all different colors and shapes, and sizes, but if that was a mutation at one point that just caught on and became part of that subspecies. I mean, because there's normal albidus, and then there's color phase albidus, and and they all do well.
Kind of a cline of, pardon me, kind of a cline of, or a spectrum of plumages in some of these birds. But and it makes sense that not that our North American goshawks don't cover a huge range as well, but if you look at some of the different habitat types across Russia, where these albidus and Butioides goshawks exist, it sort of explains why there's such a color range. They occupy quite a variety of different habitats. And that's why you see such variability. But you're right. From an evolutionary standpoint, how do birds become colored one way or another? Yeah, there's probably some mutation that occurs along the way. And then if a bird that's white does just as well in a habitat as a bird that's brown, and it gets to survive long enough to reproduce and pass those genes on, then maybe that's where that comes from. Have you ever wondered why, when you look at say a gerfalcon, it's not the case with goshawks. I'm not clear on why this is, but you look at a gerfalcon that's super, super white. I mean, picture the whitest gerfalcon you can imagine. It still has black wingtips. Or a gull even is a good example. Most gull species, not all of them, but some gull species that are mostly white have black wingtips. And that's because the wingtips are what's going to endure the most amount of wear. And the black melanin creates rigidity and strength in that plumage. Their entire white body is an expression of, well, we don't need the color here for durability. We obviously don't need it for camouflage because we don't produce it and we're surviving. But they still retain those black wingtips because they can't afford to have their primaries worn down and affect their flight. So it's really interesting, some of the tiny little micro reasons that affect bird plumage.
Is that a fact? Because I've heard this, it's like a debate back and forth, and like one guy will say, I'm convinced that the white feathers are brittle. And then I've literally heard other respected guys say, I think it's the opposite, honestly. So I don't know, because I've heard it both.
Yeah, I don't know why a gerfalcon or a California gull would have black wingtips on an otherwise white body, and a white goshawk doesn't. That I don't understand. But personally, I've only had my hands on one proper white individual, and I didn't get the impression that plumage was any more delicate than plumage that had otherwise color. When you say that some people will make that claim, is that because they're experiencing their falconry birds wearing their plumage more? Or?
Wearing their plumage more, or selling birds and breeding them, and then seeing like the, holding birds back, flying them, and then flying other subspecies. And then, it's like it's like a case by case basis, I guess, because, I have one, and it's a not a case by case, a bird by bird basis, because I have one bird that she doesn't get a tail guard. She holds her tail off the ground. When she baits on a bow perch, she floats her tail deliberately. Mm-hmm. When she mantles, she never jams it. And then I've had other birds that just jam everything. And when they bait, it's like a pogo stick into the freaking ground, breaking every feather. So it's like, it's hard to say scientifically unless you do like a test or something.
And you'd have to do that. You'd have to, pull out an electron microscope and look at some feathers really close to see whether there's any structural difference. I'm sure it's been done, but I think you just made a pretty good case for the fact that when we talk about plume, color being better from a durability standpoint as falconers, like we're really splitting hairs at this point,
right?
Because and there's a lot of hair splitting that occurs in the world of goshawks in particular, because you're wading into a world where there's a little uncertainty. Goshawks can be great and they can be terrible. And you want to do everything you can in your planning to make sure you get the best experience possible. You make the best falconry bird out of it. So you think about all these little things, but at the end of the day, whether a bird's a little more this color, a little more that color, probably doesn't matter in the big picture. It's probably more down to things like how it was raised, genetics, and how the falconer manages them. That's huge. Like you describing a bird jamming its tail into the ground when it's mantling, I would argue it's probably been handled in a way that's encouraged that. And if you don't want broken feathers, you probably should have a program that doesn't encourage that. And that's easy for me to say, not necessarily easy for anybody to do, but that's the reality. Is that's a management issue, more than it is necessarily a plumage characteristic.
Oh yeah, it's 100% on me doing something I shouldn't have done with that individual that made it want to act so, defensive and jamming at stuff. And then for whatever reason, the other one, I just maybe didn't make in all the time or let her sit and let her calm. And then she was hacked maybe longer than the other birds. Mm-hmm. But all right, we could talk about this all day. Aaron's got a question. Go ahead, Aaron.
I want to ask you, Steve. Casey has said many times that hacked birds respect their tails.
I've heard that. I heard that long before I started hacking birds. They definitely have a better awareness of themselves physically. You can see that when you take a hack bird and train it and start flying it. They land in a tree like they know what they're doing because they do know what they're doing, versus a chamber bird that might be awkward about that until it figures it out. Do they take better care of their plumage? That's a great question. Some of the worst birds for damaging themselves are some of the worst imprints. And I think tame hacking tends to produce a really nice imprint if you do it properly. So I think what we're seeing with some of these, and I've heard these claims from others lots before, I think what we're seeing with these hack birds being a little more respectable of their plumage is, or as we interpret it, might not be a matter of them being aware of their plumage and being more respectful of themselves, as much as they just physically know how to handle themselves better. They move differently because they've been around. You watch these birds at hack cruising around, and you think about the goshawk that never got to hack, the one that spent all that time of in that stage of development tied to a perch. They're just not the same animal. They can't be. Yeah. Now, they may ultimately down the line end up being a similar finished product, but at that stage, when you're starting to handle them and you're starting to fly them and catch stuff with them and they're learning how to wrestle things, a hack bird already knows a lot about how to handle its body physically. So they're probably a little easier on their plumage by default.
Yeah. Do you have much experience with tame hacking?
Yeah. So I started this Peregrine hack project 15 years ago. And that year I took a wild goshawk. I still have him. He's 15 now, obviously. Wow. And he's sort of my founder breeder, and I can talk a little more about him later, but I tame hacked him here. So my first year hacking peregrines here, I was living up top across the river in a trailer, and he was just going to be a partridge hawk. I had flown a goshawk 2 years prior, lost him, and this was his replacement. And because I happened to be in goshawk territory, and I'd tame hacked a couple of imprints before, but I thought I'm going to hack him here in the woods where he really belongs, and I'll push the envelope a little and see what I can get away with and hope for the best. And I did about a 21-day hack with him before I just lost my cool and said, I can't push it. This is cool. I want to keep going, but it's time to call him in and turn him into a hun hawk. I tame hacked a female here about 9 years ago. She's another one of my breeders. She was a falconry bird for a couple seasons. And then I've tame hacked some peregrines here as well, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, I've kind of covered a few different angles.
Okay. So can you run us through, pretend like we know nothing at all about a tame hack?
Yeah, you know what else? I'll even go one step back and just sort of explain the difference, the basic differences. So a tame hack can include an imprint that you raised, and it can be any degree of imprinting. You know, it doesn't have to be a full imprint, but a bird that you take before it's able to really move around. And once it gets to a stage where it starts to move, you put the telemetry on it and you liberate it for some portion of its day. That's sort of probably the more common tame hack approach. And then there's the one, Casey, when we talked the other day, I mentioned briefly the 4-week window concept. A lot of people are familiar with. That's a tame hack of parent-reared birds, captive bred parent-reared birds in most cases, where you take a bird at about 35 days old when they recognize that they're a falcon or a hawk, but you tame them just enough that you can get them back to a lure at the end of every day. So they're liberated in the morning, they're out throughout the day, and then you call them back in, and they're just on the edge of being wild. And what's interesting about those birds is that rolling into a falconry scenario comes quite organically, because while they're loose throughout the day, flying around, they're still coming into a lure at the end of the day. So they're getting a certain amount of handling. Wild hacking is where things get wildly different, pardon the pun. And wild hacking, where I'm doing it here, involves taking young raptors that are captive bred, in some cases with our peregrines. They're wild salvage peregrines from urban nest sites. But these birds go into a box at about 35 days old. They are locked up for a week. They're fed in the box. They can see their surroundings. They have about a 180-degree view of everything in front of them. And they do a sort of a short-term imprinting on that little space on the box as their comfort spot. Their food is there. Their siblings are there. And then they're liberated. And the big difference between a tame hack of any sort and a wild hack is that the wild birds are wild and they don't come in at night. They're out 24 hours a day. There's no handling involved. There's no obvious interaction between you and the birds that relate to food. So they're very much a wild raptor. And that's where the concept of hacking originally came from, was this idea that you could produce a bird that's just like its wild counterpart and still reclaim it for falconry. So the birds go in the hack box at about 35 days old, give or take. In the case of peregrines and goshawks, the age that they come out is about the same. It's about 42 days for males, 44 for females. And that's under ideal conditions. Obviously, if you have a 42-day-old male goshawk in a hack box and a 38-day-old female next to him, you have to make some adjustments to account for the fact that she's a little bit behind him. And other factors are built into, like weather. Weather is a component. You don't want to open a hack box full of babies when it's hailing outside or raining like crazy for 3 days. But those are the optimum ages, is 42, 44, 45 days old for females. And they're liberated for a period of time. They come back to the box every day. They don't go inside the box, but they come back for food. And ultimately, if the intention is to recapture them, you get in a blind and you set up where they come for food, and you do your best to catch the bird that you're after and train them just like a passage bird. That's where you pick up. Unlike the tame hack bird that rolls into falconry sort of smoothly, the wild hack bird has to be treated like a passage bird and put through a manning phase before you can start flying it.
That makes sense. Now you said that chamber birds, like birds that are raised in a chamber, I'm assuming with very little interaction with humans, you will hack a bird like that also?
Yeah. When I say chamber bird, I'm talking about a parent-reared bird.
Parent-reared bird, yeah.
Yeah, non-imprint. And I'm talking, and for me with goshawks, parent-reared means raised by a female imprint, but no interaction with people. I know some people do it differently. Some people insist that natural pairs and having the male present really makes a big difference. I don't tend to feel like that matters a whole lot when it comes to producing a good falconry bird. Maybe if you're trying to consider the bird as a future breeder, that's an important consideration. But just as far as producing a falconry bird, a chamber bird to me is a young goshawk raised by its mother in isolation, probably with siblings. But for all intents and purposes, it's the same as a bird taken out of the nest at 35 days old.
Okay. And then you said that you'll hack that bird at what age?
So they go in the box at 35, give or take.
So they go in the box at 35 days old. Yeah. And then the scenario you painted earlier where you'll reclaim them with a lure at the end of the day.
That's a tame hack. Yeah.
Yeah. So then there has to be some sort of a manning process before you can just cut them loose and expect them to come back to a lure, right?
Yes. Yeah. These 4-week window birds, these tame hacked parent reared birds, when they come out at 35 days, they go through like a 2-day blitz of taming. And I should quantify what I'm talking about by saying I haven't done this. I only know those who have. And I know that 4-week window concept was really refined on Anatum peregrines in particular. I know others that have done it subsequently with other species to varying degrees of success. But Anatum peregrines, when you take them out of the chamber from their parents at 35 days old and you put them in a box in your living room and openly feed them, they get tame really, really fast. And you only need them to be tame enough to identify a lure and know that you can pick them up and they don't have to worry about that. And then you can tame hack those birds. But the wild hack birds, there's no handling, no taming, no food association, nothing. They go straight from the chamber into a hack box. They might see a little bit of human activity. They'll see, I position the hack box in a way that they can see a little bit of vehicle activity. I will actually go through the hack property with my dogs the odd time, and that's not to tame them. That's not an effort in having them see a dog and go, okay, dogs are not a problem. In fact, what I'm hoping to do is subconsciously create a goshawk that goes, there are predators in the woods here. I need to be conscious of that and stay off the ground. That's a theory. I don't know if that has any benefit, but there's no interaction between those birds in the hack box and the dog or me when I'm walking through the woods or anyone else who happens to wander by. They're totally wild.
Okay.
Totally wild.
And how long, I don't know if you said it already, if I was just spacing out, how long does it take them to wed to that box?
That's why. So one of the fun things about doing this peregrine hacking over the years is that I've been, like I mentioned earlier, given some autonomy as far as experimenting with those things. I haven't experimented a ton with goshawks, but I didn't start hacking goshawks until I had a lot of peregrines behind me. I've hacked about 400 peregrines in the last 15 years. So
wow.
We've seen a few things. And my experience has been that the first batch of peregrines that we'll hack in a year need to be in the box for about a week in order to have a real solid sense that that's their place to come back to. In subsequent batches, I'll hack multiple birds. I'll hack a group out of one hack box this week and another hack box next week. And the groupings are all arranged according to age and development. And the subsequent releases require the birds to be in the boxes for less amount of time. I can take a peregrine and put it in a hack box for one night and let it out if there are already other older peregrines that are hacked out of that box that are coming back for food because they follow one another.
Gotcha.
If you tried to pull that off with the first round of hack birds, or if I tried to put my goshawks in a hack tower for one night and open it up, they wouldn't come back. They wouldn't know the first thing about what that box meant. They would feel like they were confined for a night and then they escaped. But after a week, it's like they're pretty comfortable in there. They feel pretty safe. And that seems to be what it takes to get them to come back. Now,
got it.
I should tell you this because you learn something new every year. Like I never professed to know all of this stuff. There's always something new. I liberated 3 goshawks from a hack tower on Wednesday this week. Wednesday this week. So about 5 days ago. And to my knowledge, neither one of those goshawks has been back to the hack tower to actually eat. But they've found a peregrine box about 50 yards away in the bush, and that's where they're hanging out eating right now. So, what is it they say about best laid plans? Like, you think you got it all figured out. A week in a hack box, these things aren't going anywhere. They'll be fine. And the next thing you know, they're eating at the neighbor's place.
Okay. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I also ask selfishly because I just spent months of my life building my wife a new chicken coop because she decided to buy 15 random chickens from Tractor Supply. And they were confined to a small coop and we let them out, free range. And then they'd go back to the small coop and it's small. There's 15 of them in there and they're making it disgusting and stuff. So I've been rushing to get this thing done. So I have this beautiful coop that it's awesome. Okay. And then I put them in there and then I tried to leave them in there. I left them in there for about 4 or 5 days, food, water, and they go into the coop, out into the weathering area, quote unquote weathering area, where they can mill around. And then I was like, all right, they're probably good. I opened the door. And then of course that night they're all jammed back in that little coop across the yard.
Yeah.
Rather than going back to the beautiful one I made them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
they have some fidelity to that other coop that they just can't get rid of. It's not unlike rehoming, homing pigeons, which can be done, but some just aren't going to play. They're just not going to. You're not going to convince them to leave or to set up shop in a new location. The nice thing about captive raptors is at 35 days old, they're still very impressionable. They haven't lived long enough to have solidified their place in the world. And if you put them in a hack box for 7 days, they go, okay, I guess this is where we live now. They are incredibly, I don't know if loyal is the right word, but it comes across as loyalty to one another. So when you're hacking siblings together, they might end up 100 yards away from the hack box. I mean, I spend a tremendous amount of time in the first week or so just going out and finding them, just curious what they're doing and making sure there are no issues. And it's wild to me that you might be looking around for hours and finally find a goshawk and go, wow, there's one. What's he doing this far away? And then there's his sister and there's his brother and there's his other sister. And they're right there. And they might be shoulder to shoulder on a branch in some cases, or one's up high and then the others are laying around in the sun on the ground. So that's why with the peregrine hacking, and in years that I've done multiple batches of goshawks, the time in the hack box becomes almost meaningless if they are joining others that hack already that have been out for a while.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now, just technical day-to-day question. Are you going in there at night and placing the food in there?
I feed them during the day. If I go to the box and bird, like that happened this morning, I think I was telling you yesterday that I need a little bit of time this morning to make my rounds. Same thing happened today that happened yesterday. I go up to the hack boxes and there's birds eating on them. And there's no sense this early on. I just opened one box full of peregrines yesterday. Bumping them away from the hack box right now just serves no benefit. And as long as there's food there, then their fidelity remains. They're still loyal to that box.
Okay. So they'll come back to it.
Yeah. You just want to avoid prolonged periods where there's no food present, because then their brain starts to kick in and they go, where do I have to go to get fed around here? But I don't make any particular effort to avoid them seeing me bringing the food, if that's kind of where you were going.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you'd have to go in at night and place the food so that in the morning that they're good to go, or if you're not worried about it and you just go during the day and restock and then leave.
No, I don't feed at night to do it undercover, but I do put food up the evening prior to make sure that in the morning anyone who shows up is going to have food to get to. Gotcha. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of effort, and I'm assuming the goshawks are not the same as the peregrines where you're releasing them. Well,
that's what's really cool about this particular spot, and like I mentioned at its inception, this was just me coming to work and do peregrine release stuff. But through the tame hacking of imprints over the years, and then eventually starting to breed goshawks, I went, I think I can make this even cooler than it already is. I can tell you at times I've had as many as 35 peregrines all flying around together here, and it's quite the air show.
That's crazy.
But throwing goshawks in the mix is really fun because we are so where I am is a river that cuts through the boreal forest. It's prime peregrine habitat. You don't tend to think of this as being falcon habitat because it's wooded, but it is prime peregrine habitat. And in Alberta, where we see peregrines, it tends to be this kind of terrain. It just so happens that the mature boreal forest is also good goshawk habitat. So I'm right where these two otherwise unlikely species overlap. So I can hack peregrines and its ideal peregrine hack habitat. I can hack goshawks and its ideal goshawk hack habitat. And I never thought I would see interactions between them the way that I've been seeing. What's really neat is that with no adults present here, there's no tribalism between them. It's not like the goshawks do goshawk things and the peregrines do peregrine things. They interact with one another. They'll eat side by side, shoulder to shoulder on the hack box. They'll sleep on a limb together at the edge of the forest. And what's really, really neat is that
cool.
You can assume that peregrines, when they get a nice windy day, are going to ride some updrafts and get up in thermals and start cruising around chasing one another. Would you believe me if I told you goshawks would be right up there with them? I mean, it's crazy.
I would believe you, yeah.
I would not. I would call you a liar.
Yeah, I would have called myself a liar too, but
come on. They go up. I've seen them go up, when they're young and they're playing, they go up.
Oh yeah. If they can, they
but not super high though.
When you were young, did you ride thermals?
I have a shoebox full of blue ribbons for riding thermals, dude. Okay. I was the best there was.
It's really
my mom started me off early. She made sure I had a good coach. And now I'm a retired thermal rider. Aaron's just jealous that I was a superior athlete when I was younger. I really was. I still got it. I still got it too. I'm very athletic. No, people don't realize this about me.
You got to get up here and show us your thermal.
It's true.
Aaron's seen me jump a fence with my hands in my pockets, running at full speed.
There you go.
And it was a 6-foot high fence.
No. 2 feet taller than he is.
That is, I mean, that's so cool. So then when does it become, because at a certain point, they're not going to be all buddies, like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're dead right.
When does that become a concern? And then is there ever a point where you're out there panicking in a blind, like just flashing pigeons trying to like get these birds separated so they don't kill each other?
No. So, okay, there are some similarities, some overlaps, and there are some stark differences. And one of the big differences is that peregrines here, they don't live here year round, right? They're highly migratory. When our peregrines leave here, they are gone. And they are not, they may be capable of independence while they're still here, but they're still feeding on our quail. So they have to kind of play by the rules. They can't pick a fight with every other peregrine that tries to eat the quail next to them, because they're just going to be fighting their whole lives. When they're really tired of the action here, they just leave. They go and they start hunting on their own. And I had photographed a peregrine here once on August 27th, and I could read her band. They wear a band that you can read through a spotting scope. And I could read her band. I have a photograph of her on a hack box on August 27th. And memory serves me, it was October 14th. She was trapped on Padre Island, Texas, at a research station. So when they get up and go, they go. They don't come back. Where the goshawks are here all the time. So I expected to see the goshawks start getting less tolerant of one another, and it was kind of going to be interesting to me to see how that unfolded. But I think they do kind of the same thing. They start to disperse if they feel the pressures of the hack site, if they feel like it's not worth the food, especially males. If you have females and males that hack together, the males learn so fast how to watch their butts. Like they just can't afford to keep their heads down. And those are going to be the first birds that start to leave when things get contentious. But while the birds are still here, whether it be goshawks or peregrines, and I've hacked a handful of other birds along the way, they're really civil with one another. They squabble. They'll play fight. They'll dog fight, but they're not trying to hurt or kill and certainly not eat one another.
Right.
You don't see any more
because they're well fed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you don't see any more contentious interactions between species than you see within the species. Like peregrines are fighty little bastards at a hack site. They love to scrap. It's so funny to me. I'll go and put 15 quail out on a hack box and have 25 peregrines out cruising around. And they might all be sitting, half of them are sitting in a spruce tree looking at me, looking at the hack box rather, wondering when they can get their moment to go in. And nobody wants to go. One goes in, grabs a quail, and goes, "I'm out of here," and takes off. And now it's the mob. Everyone wants that quail.
Yeah.
They all want that quail. They don't want the box quail, those crummy box quail. They want the one that somebody already took off the box and took to the cliff. That brings up some fun stories. We've had some wild peregrines breeding here over the years. We hack here because it's a historic peregrine site, but they weren't here when we started. And we occasionally have our hack birds return here as adults, as 1, 2, 3-year-old birds.
That's so
cool. And they're usually just coming in to suss out whether the territory can be occupied. But sometimes those birds come back and actually go back to the hack box.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so this is kind of a layered example of what we've seen, and I'll try not to be too long-winded on it. We had a pair of peregrines that were breeding down the highway from us, and they were nesting underneath a bridge, busy highway, horrible spot. They're all going to, all the young are going to get killed on the highway when they fledge. And we hacked peregrines here a number of years in a row, and we'd actually go and take their young off the bridge and move them here just to salvage them, just to make sure we didn't waste those perfectly usable peregrines, and to get them on a cliff. Well, lo and behold, after 2 years of failing in their minds, this pair of peregrines moved 40 kilometers up the highway and just nested here. Right. So they're now nesting on a cliff as opposed to that awful bridge where they were going to lose all their young. And so we have a resident adult female, resident adult male. They have young on the cliff, and we want to proceed with our hack program, but we have to consider what these peregrines are going to mean to us. And we decided, which this is where the unconventional side of our hack program here kicks in. We decided that rather than try to find a new location and just leave this to these peregrines, we might be able to continue to hack birds and do it in a way that the adults don't become a problem. And what we theorized was that if we take their young off the cliff and replace them with the oldest young that we have available to us from captivity or from other nest sites, we can make it so that the first peregrines to fledge in this valley are their young. They fledge from that cliff. And then we subsequently open hack boxes and let more young trickle into the environment. And the adult peregrines don't have the ability to distinguish between their young, even though those are fostered young, and the hack birds, which later down the line included their young, because when we took their young off the cliff, replaced them with old birds, we then had to recycle them through the hack process. So we figured out how we can have resident peregrines and have a hack site at the same time. Back to the adult peregrines returning thing. I was here one day and the resident male peregrine was feeding like 6 people. Like he's just hunting all day long. He'd show up and he'd be gone. He'd show up and he'd be gone. And every time he'd show up, there's food. There's a quick interaction with the young peregrines or the female, and he's gone. And if ever another adult male comes into the territory and he comes back, there's a fight. One of our hack birds showed up and he was 2 years old at the time. He had been here the year before, returned as a 1-year-old. Now he's back as a 2-year-old bird. He goes into the hack box and he grabs a quail off the hack box and he brings it down and feeds it to the resident female peregrine, trying to court her and steal her while her male is out of town. He's off hunting.
Right.
To try to get his piece.
The mailman trying to work his way in there.
Yeah. And then of course what happens is the young peregrines see this female adult on the cliff eating a quail and they come and take it from her. And all the while the hack box up the hill is covered in quail. All these babies could be going and they're eating all they want, but it's that it's the that adult peregrine with a quail is more significant to them than the one on the box. And that's just hard wiring. That's all that is. It's programmed.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating project you're part of. And just for for the listeners that, and some people are probably just reading between the lines that you are working with a government agency doing this and you're not just kind of like, relocating peregrines as you see fit.
No, unfortunately, I can't do this kind of thing under my own power. And it's been a great project to be a part of. It's given me certain latitude when it comes to some of this stuff. But no, it is a salvage program. We do hack a handful of captive bred birds that we have available to us each year, but it's mostly just trying to salvage. We have a really good urban nesting population of peregrines that have a horrible. Some of the nest sites in particular are really horribly high mortality at fledging. So rather than just waste all these peregrines, we move them out just fairly low cost. Like what we do here is not expensive. Right. And we move them out here to try to just, one more arrow in our quiver when it comes to peregrine recovery stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's super cool and fascinating. But now let's say you find a nest under a bridge and you're aware of it. Like, do you have to send in requests? I'm just thinking because the US dealing with these people. So you have to send in a request form that then they'll take 3 weeks to read and then decide and then send it back to you, giving you express permission to climb under the bridge. And
I'm not doing any of that sort of stuff with peregrines without the right paperwork. It's all done above board. So I do some of this work I can do under the authority of a banding permit. Some of it is just under the purview of the government. They have to send the right people out to do that kind of thing. And to make those decisions. I can't make those decisions on my own. I'm not a policymaker. I'm not a wildlife manager on the government payroll. I'm a contractor. I'm a falconry bum, and I like hacking peregrines. It's kind of that simple.
Freaking awesome.
So I get what they give me, and I hack them the way that they sort of give me the liberty to hack, and get the results.
So every peregrine that you're hacking is taken from an urban nest?
Not everyone. Most of them. When we started, we were mostly acquiring them from captive breeding. But now the majority of them are coming from sites that have those notoriously high mortality rates.
Are you leaving any young in the nest?
Depends on the site. If it's a site where year after year they're all getting killed on the road, they're all fledging and hitting a building and dying, or they're probably the saddest are not the ones that get killed in that moment. They're the ones that get injured that have to be in a vet clinic or a rehab facility for a period of time, and they miss that developmental window that they need in order to function as a wild peregrine. Sometimes you can salvage those birds by putting them in the hands of a falconer. I've flown a few. My wife flew one a few years ago and got them nice and fit. and hunting and turned them loose. But the developmental advantages of a proper hack is it's meant to simulate proper fledging, and these birds in the city just aren't getting that. So if we have a nest site that, sometimes they do all right, but sometimes not so well, we might leave a young so that pair continues to use the site and be productive. But if it's a really, really bad place, or in some cases where it's creating a conflict, like some industrial peregrine sites these peregrines are constantly beating people up and causing work stoppages and all that sort of stuff, we might grab everything. But again, I'm not a part of the decision-making process there. I usually get a phone call. I got a batch of peregrines. Where can you put them? And they come out if we have room for them.
Oh, that's so cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
At what age are you putting them in the hack box?
So the peregrines are ideally, like I said before, whether it be goshawks or peregrines, ideally you'd put them in around 35 days. So
you're hand feeding up to that point? No,
they're chamber raised by their parents. So a captive peregrine is coming from a breeding project raised by its parents until 35 days. Same with a goshawk going in a hack box. The wild birds will come to us a little bit older because in a lot of cases they're actually left the opportunity to fledge where they are. And if they end up down on the ground in a bad spot, they might get shuffled out here. So I might get the odd peregrine from the city that's 42, 44, 45 days old. But those ones, like I mentioned earlier, those ones are typically added to when I already have lots of peregrines flying around. So they don't need to go in the box for long. They go in for a night or two and out they go, and they stick around. So it can vary, but optimally, if I got to pick, I'm getting them at 35 days old.
So when they're at the point that they will eat,
they can eat
a
on their own.
carcass that's sitting there.
The considerations are that they can feed on their own, and they're a little bit durable to weather. The hack box is only so big, and if you get a good driving rain, they can only last so long in there if they're younger. But once the majority of the down has kind of been covered by body feathers, they're safe to go in a hack box.
So could you wild hack a bird that you hand fed up to 35 days?
I suppose you could. I think you might really confuse the bird. I mean, that would then be a tame hack, I guess.
Could a hack where it's been imprinted and then it's no longer being retrieved at the end of the night? I don't even know if there'd be an advantage to it. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I suppose,
maybe if you wanted to release it back to the wild.
I suppose you could. There's a lot unknown about how imprints fare in the wild. And I mean, speaking of goshawks, that would be a really tough one to figure out, because how do you ever determine where that bird's going to end up, whether it will actually thrive and reproduce and all that stuff. From a falconry perspective, I don't see much advantage to raising an imprint and then trying to proceed with more of a wild hack format. I think the tame hack format, if you do it right, it works really, really well. It's low risk, high benefit. So no, I don't think you'd hand feed a bird and try to approach the wild hacking thing. You'd confuse the hell out of it.
I've got two questions for you that have come up along the way before we get too far away from them.
Sure.
You had mentioned somebody trapped a bird that you had hacked in Texas.
Yeah.
You said San Padre. That's Texas, right?
Padre Island's on the East Coast. It's on the East Coast of Texas in the Gulf.
Okay. Have you had anyone trap a bird that you have hacked for falconry purposes?
I have. I catch the odd. So the odd bird we've put out over the years has gone out with a seamless band still on it. In some cases, our local peregrine breeders have wanted birds back for themselves, but wanted them to go out for a hack period. There's nothing stopping me here. I'm on private property with permission from the landowner. So if I wanted to get myself a new hybrid this year, I could put it in the hack box and hack it if I wanted to take the chance. And
I mean, somebody trapping a passage peregrine in the United States.
My understanding is that if you are a licensed falconer in the States and you catch a banded peregrine, I don't think you're allowed to keep it. But I'm not. You're not?
No.
I'm not super clear, Casey. Maybe you're
okay.
Yeah, I had a passage peregrine, and yeah, you can't. It says it they send you this whole document that's like basically all the ways you can go to jail if you don't follow what's on that piece of paper.
Yeah,
it's
I've
crazy.
never trapped a falcon, but I wasn't sure about that because you could shoot. If you shoot a wild duck and it has a band, you just call in and report.
Yeah, and I understand why wildlife managers limit access to banded peregrines, because generally banded peregrines are coming from places where their management is still intense and there's some recovery still ongoing. But I mean, the law is the law. I'm not going to try to pretend that should be ignored. I would love to hear about peregrines coming from this hack site ending up being falconry birds. I'm a falconer at heart before any of this, so I love those stories, but I don't think I'm likely to ever hear anything back because of the fact that you're really not supposed to keep those birds.
Yeah, I think, and a lot of other people think this, and it just makes perfect sense. If the bird is banded either by you through a hack station or through a nesting program or a banding program, like it's part of the variables. It's part, like, this bird ended up in falconry. This one got hit by a bus.
Yeah.
This one's 10 years old.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, it should be part of it. Like, okay, like that should be part of it. But I don't understand why it makes a big deal about it.
The notion that a bird removed for falconry is permanently removed from the equation. That's a philosophy that some wildlife managers adopt, and they look at it because they kind of have to from a biological standpoint. If we're going to allow someone to harvest a peregrine, we have to be okay with it being permanently removed from the population, because it may never end up back in the population, but it also might. I think of especially.
I think most probably do, right?
I would say most passage peregrines, if they're flown by me, definitely end up being.
That's where
they'll end up back in the wild in a couple months.
Yeah, give them like a month or two. They'll be back. They'll be back on their migration in no time.
That's exactly where I was going to go. I think especially like falconers down in Mexico that fly a lot of passage peregrines, and a lot of those peregrines would come from Canada. I'd be very surprised if nobody's ever caught one of our peregrines, and I have certainly no problem with somebody flying one. It's the law that gets in the way of that kind of thing happening sometimes. So
in Mexico, they're probably flying that. They're not releasing it.
They're flying it. Hey, they do whatever they want down there.
If I lived in Mexico, I might operate differently. I don't know. I'm not sure. Not picking on anyone down there, by the way.
No,
they're great falconers down there.
They really are.
What is possible is that, and it's a possibility with goshawks too, because I don't recapture all of my goshawks necessarily. And there might be a peregrine or a goshawk out there with a seamless band on it. And I can't speak to the peregrines because I don't own them. But if someone out there catches a seamless banded goshawk that came out of my project and it got lost at a hack site, I do want to hear about it. And I hope you fly it and love it, because that would be so cool to me.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut.
All right. Next question that I had.
Sure.
Mortality on the hack site for you.
Okay.
Wait, I had one more question before. I don't want to.
Wait. I have another question that I want to ask too before my.
Well, I don't want to move on. I just want to know, like, is because we've been talking about the peregrines and hacking them into the wild. You said you don't reclaim some of your goshawks. So you're going through all the effort of breeding goshawks, and then you're just allowing them to just hack out into the wild? Like, it sounds
kind of flippant, careless, but the reality is I've just learned through hacking peregrines that you can't sign yourself up for this kind of thing and not expect some loss. So I do it. You kind of have to do it willing to accept a total loss, which I haven't experienced, but if it happened, it happened. And then I would probably reevaluate the value of doing this kind of thing. But for me, it's, I can find myself, we have a limited market for goshawk sales in Canada. There just aren't that many falconers who want to fly goshawks. And some years when the birds are at that age that they could go in a hack box, I'm looking and going, I might have one or two of these things that I have to fly myself, and I might not have the time for that. So being able to put them out at hack buys me a little bit of time to maybe find a buyer. But also there's that possibility in the background that bird might not come back from the hack site. We've had them killed. It does happen. But if you want the finished product, you have to take the losses. There's just no way around that.
I got you.
So I accept the fact that some of my birds are going to get eaten by foxes. Some of them are going to get killed by peregrines or horned owls or red tails or people, power poles, windows. Like, I could go on. I've lost goshawks to a number of different things and peregrines. But the hack bird that makes it through the process that you get your hands on helps you get over that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. That's a good answer. Okay, it makes sense.
All right, my question.
Go ahead. He answered your question, but go ahead.
Stories of mortality.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to hear the bad?
I'd love to hear the bad, because it happens.
Yeah.
As someone who's on the show once said, hacking birds, all benefits with one potential big downside.
Yeah, there is one. Yeah, there's one real bad thing that can happen, and that's the whole thing. The whole thing just comes to a stop. I've had goshawks hit windows. I've had them hit windows and survive. Had them hit windows and die. I had one fried on a power pole, but we called the power company and got that resolved pretty quickly. I lost a peregrine that way years ago too. I had a peregrine run over by a train. There's a bridge about 500 meters from here, and she must have been up there laying down on the tracks or something, because one day she was down in the river with a leg and a wing missing and laying on the beach, and I had to put her down. So foxes have been probably the number one predator, but I've figured out over the years how to avoid fox predation. That's very manageable.
How's that?
Shoot them, trap them.
A little bit of trapping does some good. The big downside is that they live on a property where the landowner's happy to have them. So I don't have full autonomy to just, take care of them the way I'd like to.
My dad and my stepmom had a family of red foxes in their yard that they were just so tickled were there.
Yeah, they're really
Every
cool.
time I went there, I was like,
they're cool little animals, but when you're trying to hack birds, like, you don't want to see them. I feel the same way about horned owls. People find it wild to hear me talk, respectfully about horned owls. They're an incredible super predator of an animal. I don't want to see them where I go hawking, though.
Same.
So I don't love seeing foxes here when I have peregrines out that might be on the ground, or goshawks that might be on the ground. But the number one risk with foxes around is that sure, they can kill a young raptor, but that is a narrow window. Like we talked about earlier, those birds grow up pretty quickly. They only need to see a fox a few times to realize that thing's around and I have to be cautious of it. So fox predation has been a minimal issue. Probably more than anything, I've had issues with foxes stealing food off the hack boxes, because our hack boxes, the tower you saw is elevated, but the peregrine boxes, a fox that's real bold can get to. So I've had to figure out how to feed them in ways that the foxes can't come in and clean out. Because a fox will come in and pick up 30 quail in a night, bury them in the woods, and
Of course.
and the peregrines will have nothing to eat in the morning. So I've had to sort of counter that a little bit. But
What else steals the quail? Like, you got like raccoons, like fisher, martin, anything
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
stuff
we
like
have
that?
pine marten, we have fisher. Both we've caught on trail cameras at our hack boxes, but later in the season. To this day, I can't believe I haven't had an incident with a bear, because we have black bears here. We're a little far for grizzly bears. There are cougars in the area. A colleague of mine has done a lot of cougar collaring research, and some of her collared cats have cruised through this area pretty closely. But we've been really lucky. I had a horned owl stealing quail I operated a satellite hack several years ago at a different location down the road from here. And when we reviewed I had trouble with quail disappearing. And when we reviewed the trail camera pictures, a horned owl was coming in and taking quail every night, which is just a deal breaker, because it's a horned owl, not because it's taking quail, but because it's a horned owl. So we had to alter our plans there. But
Yeah. I mean, I could just see that being a problem. And once again, Aaron, I would never, I understand that it's a risk, but I would never view like a fox being in the area as like something like, oh my God, I got to be careful.
yeah.
or coyotes.
Coyotes I'd be concerned about, but fox.
Well, this is news to me that I know like at home they like to lay down, but I never in a million years would have thought my goshawk's laying down
And
on the ground in the woods.
Yeah, of all places, not laying down up on a pine bough or something, but on the ground, or on a stump, on a log that's fallen down on the ground. They're just laying there on a log, and you'd think they're super vulnerable, and they do get killed, but they mature pretty quickly to the point where they're not at risk doing that.
Right. Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I just, for me and like people that are listening that experienced this year's breeding for goshawks in the US, the fact that you have birds that you can't find people to, there's not a market is just crazy, because this year, like, it was nuts. People were like going crazy. Like, a lot of the breeders didn't do so well this year for various reasons. It's just one of those years, and people are just going crazy. I mean, we heard a story of I told you the story, Steve, and Aaron knows. There was not that it's a lesser bird or is worth less money, but just a standard 50-50 Finnish albitus, and I think it wasn't even white, right, Aaron?
Yeah,
wasn't white. Sold for imprint, by the way, right? Imprint sold for $4,500.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you guys have
somebody that was just desperate.
Some people were going gay to try and get
Aaron
birds
was
this year.
He was
just
ready.
trying to get your goshawk.
Yeah,
I was ready.
He was doing
ready,
whatever he could. He was offering his backside, as they say.
It's really been funny. I first bred goshawks about 8 years ago, and I've made a bunch of them in the meantime. But we don't have the falconer contingent in Canada. You know, we're a huge landmass, but our population's a fraction of yours, and you just have more falconers because of it. But I don't mind it. You know, I can go back a little bit into more detail about the history of goshawk breeding if you guys would like me to kind of
We'd love that. We'd love that.
When I grew up in Ontario and I was a teenager, I would have done anything to get my hands on a goshawk to fly. And at that time, captive breeding was not where it is now. This is 30 years ago. Goshawks just weren't available in a way that you could decide one day, I want to fly one and I'm going to get one. We didn't have any access to wild birds legally. The guys that did have goshawks were pretty quiet, pretty close to their chest about what they did. Some of them, you know, maybe were flying wild birds and shouldn't have been. I don't know. But as far as the prospect of getting a goshawk for falconry, it was just not an option. It didn't matter how much money you had, who you knew, they weren't available. So when I moved to Alberta when I was 18 years old to a province that had a wild take, it became very appealing to me to finally dip my toes into that pool. And I did it took some years because I had to get the long wing thing out of my system, but it took me some time to finally get my first goshawk. So when I the male that I mentioned to you earlier that I came back here 15 years ago, that was kind of the cornerstone of my breeding project, was just a falconry bird for me. And one of the things I enjoy about the imprints that I've had in my life is that you get more than just the falconry season interactions. You can do a little bit with them in the molt, and I've turned some male hybrids in a jur into semen donors, and I've had some females lay eggs and that kind of thing. And never occurred to me to breed goshawks until one day I'm looking at my molting male nest building, and he's looking at me like he wants a piece, and I'm going, all right, this is kind of interesting. And at the same time, a friend of mine out in BC had a Finnish female, captive bred female, that laid eggs in a chamber. She was 3-year-old or something like that. And he said, man, if you can get that bird to donate, we can make some goshawks. I thought, all right, that's like the best prospect I can imagine is what's in front of us. So he sent me his female the next year. I got him donating, and then I made my first babies. That was 8 years ago. And
awesome.
And the idea of being able to make a goshawk from retired falconry birds in my backyard, and I can't give them away. I make no bones about it. Like, I have to make a living too, but to get them into the hands of people who appreciate what they are and do a great job. And to me, a great job is not determined by head count or performance necessarily. The great job is the falconer who comes back and says, I just love this bird. I'm enjoying myself. That's an experience I can give to people now, where 30 years ago, nobody could have given me that experience, particularly with a goshawk. So it's cool for me to be able to get the feedback. That's the ultimate reward for this. I know it sounds cheesy, but that's the ultimate reward for me.
Hey, I mean, it's refreshing to hear you say that, because a couple of these guys in the States, nobody that we're, friends with, of course, but they could just care less. They could care less what happens to their birds.
I have,
as long as they get paid.
They give zero fucks about their birds. It's just like, oh, look at this. Oh, look at this awesome flight of your bird. Oh, she's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Or not even an answer. Like, it's red and they don't even answer. Or everyone's going to know what breeder I'm talking about. What weight was that at? What weight was that at?
Okay. Now I don't know who you're talking about. I'm totally out of touch. I have
1,600 grams.
I have some birds
too low.
I have some birds that originated in the States. I have some friends down there that are goshawk breeders, and I keep in touch with them, obviously, but I don't know how political and how silly it can get. I understand that when you have a product that's in strong desire, people get a little bit silly, competitive in acquiring it and then producing it too. But I guess that's one thing that's never sort of plagued me as a raptor propagator, is some really, really strong, hard driving market that I'm set to make millions getting into. I thought about breeding falcons years ago. I had imprint jurs and was kind of going down that path. And frankly, the way my life's played out, I'm glad it didn't happen. And I'm glad that the goshawk breeding gives me an outlet, because to me, it's a window into bird behavior similar to falconry. The breeding is a window into bird behavior that you just can't get any other way. And to be able to do that with my falconry birds, some of which are retired, has just been the coolest experience. So
yeah, man, I can imagine. That's
and that's not to overshadow some of the falconry experiences I've had. I mean, I've been really fortunate to have some great falconry too, but the breeding thing is just a bonus. It's a bonus to me.
Yeah, I mean, what else are you going to do in the off season? I'm out there like a I don't even know what you would call me. I have a problem. I went to bed last night at 4:00 in the morning because
he was doing yard work.
I was literally doing yard work because I cleared a bunch of stuff, and I have a big giant stump that was left there from they chopped the, whatever. It's like 4 feet in diameter. So then I was like, oh, I'm going to chainsaw little bowls in it and plant cool, ground cover, those flowers, those creeping thyme that are blue and stuff. And I'm just chipping away at it. And then last night I just went into autistic mode, and I'm out there with the drill, putting in drainage, putting filter fabric, screwing it in, putting topsoil in, and then planting all these shrubs.
You'd make a good goshawk breeder, Casey, because if you struggle to sit on your hands and not do anything, and you're looking for stuff to tinker with, it's a great way to spend your time. Now, that said, when you say, well, what else are you going to do that time of year? What else are you going to do with those falconry birds that are sitting in a chamber? You breed some goshawks for a couple of years, and you'll figure out what that list of things is. The things that you can't get to when you're committed to breeding are all those things that you should be doing.
Exactly.
I haven't gone fishing, and I haven't gone fishing yet this year. And normally by now I've been out there a ton. And the breeding, again, not complaining, it takes over. It can take a ton of your time. And
I see that.
Of the way that most goshawks, most conventional captive breeding goshawks are produced using imprints, not all of them, but most of them, your presence is required and mandatory, because you can't, if you're breeding falcons in a chamber, you're breeding natural pairs of goshawks, you can arguably have somebody else come and drop food through the chute, and the birds kind of do it on their own. With imprint goshawks, you are the other goshawk in that equation, no matter who you're interacting with. Right. So if you leave for a day, I can't just leave for a couple of days when I have to go on the road for work and ask my wife to go out and collect semen and inseminate the females. It's just not, she'll get killed. The males won't donate, the females will lose their minds, and the whole thing will fall apart, and it'll be a total loss. So from day one, which for breeding goshawks here means, males start to come into condition in February. Females start to come into condition in March, and might be laying even at the end of March. And the young of the year, if you're going so far as to wild hack them and do all this stuff, they might not be gone until September. It's most of the year, the commitment to breed. Love it.
That makes sense.
Love it and do it, or don't, because if you're not 100% into it, it's just gonna be an awful experience.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to try their hand at breeding goshawks, legalities aside, just practically speaking, how would they start?
So that's a great question. The primary priority is your imprint males. Your semen sort is the backbone of it all. Female goshawks are, as you guys are well aware, they're very plastic in their breeding behavior. They're super willing to lay eggs. I can't tell you now how many chamber birds I've produced that just get stuck in a molting pen, and the person that owns them goes out and looks one day, and there are eggs in the corner of the pen, or there are eggs on a nest ledge or something that they didn't plan to see. So these females will just go into breeding mode almost without your effort, but the males require a ton amount of work, and they're very sensitive. And I would argue that if you are setting yourself up to breed goshawks, while instinct might say get one male and service multiple females, you probably want to go the other way. You probably want at least as many males as you have females to try to cover everything, because stuff happens. And when you have females laying eggs and your one male shuts down, it's the most painful thing in the world to experience, because you got all these eggs you can't do a damn thing about. You're never going to produce young from them. So that was the big one for me. I'm going to say about,
how do you raise a donor male?
Hard imprint. If you don't ever want to fly it as a falconry bird, I mean, hell, hand feed the thing and just don't ever make them hungry. Just make them your buddy. That's not to say a good falconry bird can't be a donor. I mean, all of mine were. So I wouldn't steer away from that. But if you wanted just to make a breeder, then taking them as young as possible, raising them on their own, I think is probably most important. and then having a fallback plan. I had probably in year 3 or 4, I think it was year 4. I had 3 female goshawks all laying eggs. One of them had finished her clutch. I had all fertility. The male I had one male. He was doing great. The next female was laying. I think I caught her first egg, and then suddenly the male just stopped donating. He'd nest build with me. He'd show up at the window.
Milked him dry.
Well, here's what happened. I took you need a break. No, they don't need a break. They're unbelievable when it comes to. I mean, it's a limited opportunity for them. But what had happened
Gatorade
was 2 properties over. 2 properties over, I had a neighbor that was building a pergola over his deck, and he was working on a ladder, so you could see his head and a hammer for a couple of days. That was all it took for that goshawk to go, I'm out. I don't do this anymore. And I lost.
Imagine if we were that sensitive.
You got performance anxiety.
Yeah. Forget it. That's exactly what it is.
Blue Chew Gold or whatever. That stupid ad you always see.
So I lost a whole clutch of eggs from a female that was laying for the first time. I lost most of a second female's clutch, and it was all because I had all my eggs in one basket, really, in his basket. And then I required a bird that I bred and turned him into a donor, imported another bird, turned him into a donor. Now when I have females laying, somebody's donating no matter what. But what I've also found is that having a couple of males really fires them up. If they hear a bird next to them copulating, they're like, hey, I need to get in on this.
Get some frisky.
I have a friend that lives about an hour west of here, and he's a hardcore dyed-in-the-wool goshawk guy. Spends time in the bush like a total crazy person. And I gave him a recording of one of my males copulating when he was giving a semen donation, and he uses that now when he goes out checking territories for activity. And it's he gets the best response from male goshawks to the sound of a male copulating. Because, well, I mean, imagine this. You guys come home. I don't know who's married and who's not, but you come home and you hear that sound in your house.
Someone's getting shot.
Instinct kicks in. You not only do I want my action, I want that gone because I don't know who that is. So you can actually keep males donating through distractions by making them think that there's competition next door. So multiple donors, I think is a good approach. Not for everybody. Not everybody can pull that off, but that's my advice anyhow. The females females are so easy. So easy.
So on the female, all right, like my male that I'm raising right now, let's say, good Lord willing, he makes it. He's a few years old. He's been a falconry bird. Yep. He was an imprint. He was very young when I got him. He was perfect age. He's been hacked. Do you think he would still donate with?
Are you asking me if the hacking might get in the way of that?
Yeah.
No. I mean, I have only one of my donors was tame hacked, but he was. So yeah, no, that's.
And he's been raised the quote classic way of minimizing food association. Yep.
Yeah. You could certainly turn out a donor doing it that way. That's
okay. But you think you're more likely if they have strong food association?
Oh, I'm not suggesting that would make it better. I just think that's easier. You know, if like we go to a lot of trouble when we're raising an imprint with the plan being for it to be a nice falconry bird. But if you throw all the rules of food association and that out the window, the bird can still be a good breeder. It just might be a basket case to handle. So if you're trying to make a breeder and not a falconry bird, then I'd say, don't worry about all the rules of raising a nice imprint for falconry. Just make sure that bird thinks it's people. It needs to be in its head. It needs to be a person and want to breed with people. And that's how you do it. So what's most important, just to sort of jump on your goshawk in particular, you've raised him as an imprint. That imprinting process is sort of complete at this point as far as it pertains to his reproductive interests. What you would now do down the road, if he lives long enough, I'm hoping he will, is that in his first molt, his second molt, is you provide him with the things that stimulate the breeding behavior, and you interact with him in a way that encourages breeding behavior. And I can go into detail on that until you're absolutely bored to death. But you make or break that semen donor in the summer when the hormones are present. Hormones in the world of breeding goshawks, I'm sure it's the case with all raptors, but I'm familiar with goshawks. Hormones are the most remarkable thing. And to see the difference between a non-hormonal male goshawk and one that's cranked up and ready to breed, or even a female for that matter. Like I can tell you about one particular bird I had that was the most awful beast on earth, but the best breeder, just the most wonderful breeder. And it's hormones that make that change. It's all hormonal. Yeah. So you need to encourage the hormone flow, and you can do that a handful of ways.
And so what are you looking for in a female?
Again, same thing. If I'm not considering the bird a falconry bird, you can raise it carelessly and you can have a really nasty, loud, food possessive, grabby imprint. Even a bird that's aggressive. Like I had one that she was.
So like one of Casey's birds.
I don't know. I kind of wonder. I don't know if we need to get into this or not, but I kind of wonder if your white female. You have a white female still?
Yes.
She might be related to the one I had, and not that means anything, but I can tell you this: that bird was dangerous. To the point that I was concerned if someone tried to break into my yard and start snooping through my buildings, that she'd grab him through the bars in the face. She was given to me by a guy who used her, who imported her to use her for abatement work. And he called me one day.
Abatement work.
Yeah, he said, I can't keep this bird because I'm going to end up in a courthouse trying to defend myself because she took someone's eye out at work. So I said, well, I'll salvage her if I can, use her as a breeder and go from there. Great breeder, just a miserable, miserable bird to be around.
Yeah, all the albitus and the albitus crosses, you have the aggression is the biggest obstacle.
I've been hearing that. I can't speak to it
for every single one. You have to like nip it in the butt quick.
Yeah.
And I found that giving them what they're giving you once, it just stops it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Like just a quick story. Like it's so like, talk about rules being thrown out the window or whatever. Like I had one that would constantly go off the kill, go for my face, go for my face, go for my face. Mm-hmm. I'm talking 10 feet away, like no Dracula walk the legs, none of that.
That was this bird. Yeah. Same thing.
No, it was the first cross I flew. And that one would just go from the squirrel that it just caught. And as I'm walking up, I'd still be 10, 15 feet away. And she would just launch off of the squirrel on a beeline.
I'm saying the white female I had was the same. This falconer that's entered to me, he was bagging around pheasants, and he'd be 50 feet away, and she's coming. No, she's going to hurt you.
Yeah, that's how they are. Yeah. And the North American, nobody thinks twice about their North American doing a little Dracula walk around the feet. Mm-hmm. That's very common. Mm-hmm. The albitus just present that same Dracula walk with straight to your face. It's another level of aggression. So I've found that with all the white ones I've flown. I've probably flown 5 white ones so far. They all kind of have that in them to do that.
So interestingly, I made quite a few young out of that white female of mine, and I liked the way they were put together. They were some physically nice birds. The white color, she was half finished, so she was only 50% albitus, and of course the white doesn't come through in her offspring, but the aggression was there. And I flew I chamber raised a female out of her, and I flew that bird at white-tailed jackrabbits for 4 seasons. She was a jackrabbit killer. She was mean, but she was a bird that if you didn't watch herself, she'd leave the kill and come and this is a parent reared goshawk. So
really?
for me, it was like, man, if I can't, and I think I do a pretty decent job handling them. I'm nowhere near the best, but I know what I'm doing. And if I couldn't raise that bird the way I did and handle her the way I did and not have that kind of aggression, I don't want that. You can't sell a bird like that to a person in good conscience, I don't think. And I decided not to breed from her anymore because I saw that quality come up in her offspring. It's unfortunate. Yeah. If that aggression wasn't there, I would have been really happy to keep producing from her, but I just couldn't justify it.
Believe it or not, after talking to having Lehman on the show, another hand feeding and what's it called, Aaron? Not variable reinforcement. Optimum. What is it? Optimum.net.
Operant conditioning.
Conditioning. The issue that I found with that bird going for my face, and this is why she was a tremendous hunter and killer, and talking to Steve Lehman, and I don't care what anybody says, he's spot on with all his assessments, and sending him videos of that bird and her behavior. He's like, that's why you could fly that bird hog fat the next day after a full crop and she'd still just catch whatever moved was because she was viewing you as a sibling and she was trying to get to it before you could. And you coming in to assist her is her thinking you're coming in to rob her.
That's very interesting.
And believe it or not, if you raise that same bloodline with the aggression and you just hand fed that bird and created a communication pathway where if you act crazy, you get nothing. If you sit calmly and present calmly, you get fed. You can kind of shape the behavior out. And I've done that with other birds. And it works. It's just a lot. It's like a time commitment to do that.
Yeah. And this is an area that I really struggle with. Like my approach to training raptors is much more binary. I don't tend to sort out some of that stuff real well in my head. To me, it's like make the thing hungry, go out and hunt with it and let everything else just kind of smooth out over time. Right. But that all sounds quite sensible to me. Like, and maybe through more conscientious rearing, you could avoid that kind of thing. But like I said, to me, taking that individual bird and parent rearing it and handling it with respect of that potential for aggression and to have it come out in the ways that it did in her offspring, I'm just going like, this is clearly a genetic thing. I can't. And it's great to say, well, if you handle that bird in a very particular way and you take that approach, you do the hand feeding or whatever, you'll do fine. But I have no control over who the birds I breed end up with. I don't have I don't have the autonomy, nor would I really choose to say, I'm only going to sell a bird to this person and not that person. Unless the person is doing something terribly egregious, I'm not going to say no. And my experience has been that the odd time a falconer comes along that has nobody's support and they want to fly a goshawk and everyone around them is going, this person's never going to do it. They're going to do terribly. And I can speak to that with firsthand experience. Some of those people surprise you. Yeah. So as a seller of goshawks, you have to accept that you're going to provide birds to a range of falconers and you can't hold their hands through that process. So what I can do as a breeder, I can control through genetics. I can control through rearing, that kind of thing. But once that bird's in the hands of the falconer, it's up to them. And if the aggression tends to manifest through sort of more normal handling that you would expect the average falconer to apply, then I don't want the risk. I don't want to be the guy who's responsible for a bird taking someone's eye out and, hanging off their face. But power to
I know what you're saying. I completely understand your point of view.
This also, Casey, comes from the fact that I don't need to sell these birds. I don't have to sell them. I don't have a huge market, so I can be a little more selective in my breeding, I guess, than some people can.
Yeah. No, I got you. Yeah. It's definitely interesting. Like talking to, Moglich, Lou Sauter, a couple other guys and guys that have flown, especially the Albitus North American. It's like a consensus across the board that the Albitus North American is like a face grabber.
Oh,
like for whatever reason.
Interesting.
Like for just hyper aggressive. Huh. And then I've flown a whole bunch of Albitus Finnish, and they're basically like somewhere between a Harris Hawk and a red tail. And then they just have that aggression and edge of a goshawk. Mm-hmm. But once you get them past that edge, it's basically just a red tail or a Harris Hawk. Like it's like one of the easiest birds to fly, in my personal opinion.
Right.
But there's always like this underlying aggression that you have to manage. Yeah. And once you manage it and create the boundary with the bird, like I said, so like I had this last white bird that I had hacking her, doing stuff, and then I'm like, let me do some like some rope drags in the yard with a lure. Mm-hmm. And so I'm doing rope drags. She's coming across the yard, coming to the lure, this and that. Early on, like in September or whatever, I'm trying to get her like a little bit fit because she was flying real. I think it just ended up being that bird, right, Aaron? Because she just flew like a seagull, like no matter what, like just catching dozens and dozens of heads, squirrels up and down the trees. But she was just like she flew like a seagull. It was just weird. She had like no.
I don't know if it was a matter of she looked slow or she was slow.
I think she was slow, and I think she just didn't really care. Like she was just like, I think I overdid it with the lure machine. I think she just learned to follow the lure machine lazily and then just kind of catch it. I think I did that like for 3 days more than I should have. And if I stopped it 3 days earlier and switched over to just like wild slips where she would miss and have to try again,
Yep.
she would have like trained herself to turn on the gas, because when she wanted to catch something, she would just turn on the gas and catch it.
Yeah.
But like the first couple slips or the first half of the day was her just kind of like floating around. But so that bird, the story that bird, and people are going to cringe and say that I'm crazy, but that bird, number 3 or 4 of lure calls across the yard, I just bent down to pick her up after the lure was finished, and she was just standing there, and she like looks at the glove and is kind of all amped up, goshawk looking, and then she just like looks up at my face and then just like squats down to launch at my face. And when she did, I just took my gloved hand and just caught her like on her chest and just pinned her to the ground and just held her there.
Mm-hmm.
And I held her there for like 5 seconds straight, and she's going, going crazy. And I'm like, listen, in my mind, like, if this bird is going to ever think of going at my face and this is going to become a habit, then I don't even want the bird.
Yeah.
So a little trauma right now, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then literally she never did that ever again.
We don't, as falconers, we don't tend to think of negative reinforcement, which is what you just described, is right. It's a punishment for some bad behavior, in the hopes of discouraging it. And while I would never encourage somebody to sort of use that tool, because I would hate for someone to use it when it wasn't necessary, I would argue that a female goshawk can probably handle a little bit of that, where if you did that with a male, you are going to create problems, mega problems. And I would say that because we're so privileged now with the option to fly different species and crosses, or subspecies rather, and crosses, how much of that kind of behavior comes down to genetics and how much comes down to handling, I don't really know. But yeah, you might be onto something there, but I would say tread with caution. Because
Definitely. Yeah, I like hesitate to say it. And I've told that story on the show a couple of times, but I always say that, like, you do that, like, and I talk to other guys, I'm not going to say their names, like guys that have flown 30 plus goshawks with success
and live in northern New Jersey
and other guys too, Aaron. They say that you can do that, but like you can do it like twice. And then now there's a problem. Yeah. And it was funny because after that, she never did it again. And then I put her away. And then the next day we went out and she was just like literally acted like nothing happened. Like,
that's the thing. If you
never went for my face ever again and never came at me to attack me ever again.
Yeah. You have to tell that story with a disclaimer.
Don't do it, but I did it and it worked, but don't do it.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
So that's a big, so one of the things I discuss with a handful of people every year, it's like a common theme as a goshawk breeder, is talking about, what bird do you want to fly? How do you want to go about it? What are your options? And one of the things that's a common theme that comes up is that male and female goshawks need to be regarded as totally different species from a falconry perspective. And that's one of the major differences, is that, and I'll go back, I see this with peregrines, I see this with goshawks. When you handle, say, 35-day-old birds that are coming out of a chamber, they've never been handled by people really before, and they're going from a chamber to a hack box. The females are the ones who make all the noise. They're the ones who fight, who grab one another. And most often when I'm transporting birds to a hack site, the females get packaged individually because they're the ones that are going to hurt one another. And the males, you can line them up like sardines in a can in a transport container, because they don't fight. They just kind of hide and they're quiet. And now you can bring it out of them. You can get them riled up and get them to make a fuss. But if I were to compare goshawks, males and females, just across the board, males to females, the number one common thing in males is that if you physically restrain them in a way that they feel they shouldn't be, you're starting down a horrible path. And that bird is that's going to create hooding issues. If you're a person who wants to hood the bird, it's going to create fear of your hands. It's going to create, even so far as to, if you're the type of person who, when your bird is having a bad moment and you vocalize, if you're trying to grab the bird and cram a hood on it and you're going, you little, whatever, however you express yourself, it can get to the point where when you're in a field hawking with that bird and you start yelling to your buddy or yelling at your dog, the bird goes, oh, there's that voice I associate with being grabbed. And I start falling apart. Where females, and so the males, they tend to react to that kind of thing by just getting more and more fearful, and things just deteriorate. With the females, like you've described, you might catch them in a moment where they go, holy smokes, I didn't expect that. I didn't think someone would retaliate. I thought I was the big boss and I got to push everyone around. And now I realize I don't. But if you took that too far, eventually that female goshawk is going to start trying to hurt you again. Right. Because that's what females
or just shut down and just be completely fearful of me and just want nothing to do with me and falconry and flying and just completely like.
Yeah, that's possible too. But even when you look at interactions, like I think about the wild peregrines here, a lot of our urban nesting peregrines are on cameras, so you get an insight into their world that you don't see otherwise. The females are the ones that are going to fight in a box or on a ledge on a building or on a cliff ledge, and they're going to come to fisticuffs. They're going to grapple. One of them's probably going to have its head pulled off. If it's lucky, it survives but loses the territory to the other one. The males are much more finesseful. They fight, they display, they're up in the air, going fast, stooping, chasing one another. Very rarely actually grapple and fight. And that comes out in your falconry birds, that it is in the nature of a female raptor to use her physical dominance when she needs to. So you, as the falconer flying an imprint goshawk, seeing some of those aggression issues, you got to be really careful with how you react to that, because you might make it way worse.
Exactly. And another awesome thing that my former sponsor, Phil Elia, it's a lot of it is also muscle memory too, like in terms of the aggression.
Sure.
Where like your bird catches something or she's on the lure, and every time you immediately walk up, she flies off and goes after your face.
Yeah.
She may not even want to go after your face at a certain point, but since it's just like you walk up and she goes after your face, you back off, and then she eats. It just becomes like a routine.
Yeah.
And then it's just like,
very habit oriented. I'm flying, not at the moment. He's in a molting pen, but I kept a male back last year. I didn't hack any last year. So he's just a chamber raised bird, Russian Canadian cross, not an albitus Russian. He's from a Butioides male. And it doesn't matter what his genetics are. They don't factor in, but for the sake of what you're just discussing, he developed a habit. I'd go out and pick him up out of the weathering yard, bareheaded, and I'd hood him when I got him in the house. So I'd bring him in, put the hood on, put him on the scale, weigh him, and we'd do our thing. And he was never afraid of doors, but he developed this habit of baiting when I'd open the door to go in the house. And that's a problem because with doors and baiting goshawks, feather damage and wings busted and that kind of stuff can happen. So I decided that if I saw this progress far enough, I'd have to fix it. And I let it go a little while and I watched, I think maybe the first time he baited while we went through the door, something had spooked him, and maybe somewhere down the line it happened again. But it became this thing where no matter what, even without some stimulus spooking him, he's going to bait when we go through the door. So for a couple of days, I'd pick him up. I'd sneak a bit of food in my glove. As I was carrying him through the door, I'd let him see that, take a quick, just a tiring, a pigeon wing or something, let him pull on that a little, get him through the door, and then get the hood on. Just in a matter of days, we went back to where we had been before, which is you pick them up, you walk through the door, and there's no bait. But those habits can form. And if you're able to pick up on those undesirable habits and figure out how to break the routine to kill that habit so that it doesn't manifest and become a problem later, that's where the intuitive falconer has a tremendous advantage.
All right, folks. Steve just had some technical difficulties, so he had to step away for a short while, but we're back. You were talking about using tie rings to
break that habit.
To break the habit of the door. And that's funny you say that, because I've had the exact same thing happen at a door. Walking through a doorway with a bird, and sometimes I've done things like turned around and walked backwards through the door, and that stopped it.
Yep. You'll see a lot of that kind of thing happen with birds. It's more often with young birds. They'll start to resist going in a hawk box, that kind of thing. And you can use little tricks to, again, sometimes it's because something happened that triggers a different behavior, and that's what forms the pattern or starts the pattern. But if you can break it, you can avoid some of those things. A lot of people, their goshawk baits, when they walk through a door, they just go, well, it's a goshawk. I guess that's what they do. But you could fix those little things and make the whole thing a lot better.
It's true.
I've stopped to wonder sometimes what it is about a certain thing, because you do the same thing every single time you deal with the bird, and every time you get this reaction, and it doesn't. There's certain things that I've never been able to figure out. You might walk past a certain part of your yard that seemingly just like everything else, but every time I walk by the spot, the bird baits.
I was down in Washington State quite a few years ago with a falconer. You've heard the name Les Boyd, I'm sure.
Yes.
And he was flying a female goshawk, an imprint female that he raised, and he was flying pheasants with her. She was intermewed. He had flown her for a couple of years. And he used to hawk pheasants with her in these fairly steep canyons. So he'd walk up the roadway up the bottom of the canyon, and the bird would slope soar and chase pheasants coming in and out of the canyon. And I remember walking with Les, and he pointed to a fence post on a distant hilltop and said, she killed a pheasant from that fence post a couple of days ago. She's going to go sit there. And I thought, what are you talking about? And because she's soaring, she's up 300 or 400 feet, soaring, slope soaring. He's throwing homers. She's chasing his homers. She's going back up. I was just thrilled to watch the bird do all that because it was so unconventional.
That's crazy.
But lo and behold, at some point her brain kicked in and she went, oh, there's my spot. She went to her fence post, and seconds later, the Jack Russell kicked a hen pheasant up out of cover, and she just mowed it down and killed it. And he said that's why she sat on the fence post again. They're creatures of habit. If it works once, they'll try it again. If it doesn't work for them, they're probably not likely to try. And that's a mechanism in wild goshawks that it helps them just to survive. If a young goshawk is chasing, say, snowshoe hares and rough grouse, and not succeeding, and then it kills a squirrel, that bird wants to kill squirrels going forward, and it's going to focus its energy on chasing squirrels. I've had this conversation with falconers. They go, I don't know why my bird won't chase rabbits. I go out every day, I go for a walk, I flush lots of rabbits, and then I reward it for all that effort by bagging it on a pheasant. And you go, well, you're doing two things that are working against you catching snowshoe hares. One is you're not reinforcing the snowshoe hare as a probable target. And two is you're actually reinforcing what to that bird is its prey image, and that's pheasants, bagged pheasants. So,
right.
Goshawks are very much a creature of habit. And if you can implement that in your management at home, you can make some good progress.
It's great stuff, man.
So let's talk about your falconry.
Sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
What are you flying? What have you flown?
Yeah. I've kind of covered the spectrum. When I lived in Ontario, I grew up. My first couple birds were red tails, and I was mostly bunny hawking because that's just what you did back then. I flew a couple Harris hawks, and it was right around. I was in high school, right around the time Gary Brewer's book Buteos and Bushy Tails came out. And until then, everyone in my sort of circle had said that squirrel hawking was just something you didn't do. It was too dangerous. Your bird's going to have its toes bitten off and all this stuff. And I read Gary's book, and I thought this is my free pass to give this a shot. And I started doing a bit of squirrel hawking, and squirrels worked so much better for me because, I was flying birds before I had a driver's license. I had to get to the field, and in some cases get into a rabbit field was just not something I could do. I had to wait for a drive on the weekends, but I could ride my bike with my red tail to a local woodlot and chase squirrels. And I started catching squirrels, and it was like, okay, I see now that if this falconry thing is going to be something that works for me, it has to be focused on what quarry I have available to me. And I think that's a mistake some people make. And where you see a lot of people successful with falconry is they've identified what quarry is the most important element. So I flew a lot of squirrels, learned how to really fly hawks doing that, did a bunch of car hawking, and then I decided I want to get out to longwing country. So since I've lived in Alberta, I've mostly flown falcons. It's big sky country, lots of ag. We have Hungarian partridge are my number one quarry. That's what I've chased most of the last 25 years. We have pheasants, sharp-tailed grouse, lots of waterfowl. And we have a range of rabbits. We have cottontails, snowshoe hares, and white-tailed jackrabbits in Alberta. Awesome. I haven't done snowshoe hare hawking myself. It's just not something that I've resorted to yet, but I've hawked bunnies and jackrabbits out in the prairies. But flying falcons has been my thing for the last many years, really. I have a Gyr Barbary hybrid that I fly right now. He's 24 years old. I've flown him for his whole life.
Wow.
Very successful game hawk. At 24, he doesn't perform the way he used to, but he still catches partridge. And I have a younger hybrid that's about 7 years old, and he's a good dyed-in-the-wool hun hawk. And then I usually have a goshawk on the go as well. And this year it's just a year-old bird that I bred last year, a male. And again, primarily focused on flying Huns with him. To me, Hungarian partridge are great falcon quarry. I love killing sharptails. I love chasing pheasants. But if you want consistent, day-to-day, predictable performance that makes falcons fly respectably, then Hungarian partridge are a really tough quarry to beat where we live. I know they're a bit of a problem in other parts of the world, like where they're in sagebrush and stuff. They're not real popular falcon quarry because they tend to be a little dumpy. But in stubble, which is, we have that in spades, they're just dynamite. They're awesome. And
that's because they want to get up and get to cover when you're flushing them. Rather, if it's in sage, they'll dump back into the sage and disappear.
The sage is essentially good enough cover for them to dump into, where stubble is just too sparse. If you have Hungarian partridge dumping under a falcon in a clean wheat stubble field, it's because the bird's not high enough. It's a big bird at a low pitch or something like that, and the partridge just haven't gotten up to speed, and they decide to dump in the stubble. But it's not great cover for them to get away in, where sage is much more appropriate for them to dump and disappear into. But they're a very honest quarry. And as far as goshawk quarry, which is how I ended up flying goshawks living out here, is, to me, Hungarian partridge is sort of the pinnacle of game bird quarry that you can catch with a goshawk on a daily basis, but that is really, really close to impossible. You could aspire to catch pigeons with a goshawk. You could aspire to catch, ruffed grouse. You can aspire to catch, for all I care, snow geese with one on passage. But for reasonable, expecting success on a daily basis, you can do that with Hungarian partridge, but it is the hardest thing I've ever done. Yeah, which is what makes it so cool to me, so appealing.
Yeah, I've heard that. Are you using dogs to set up these slips?
Yeah. I've had pointing dogs for many years now.
What kind do you have?
I've had English pointers for 24 years. I think I'm on my third one now. Not everybody's choice, but they're the supreme performer in the bird dog world, in my mind, and I can live with them. So I know that's a problem for some people with pointers. We have a Brittany as well. My wife, before we moved in together, she got a Brittany. She's a falconer as well, and he's become a more prominent part of my hawking team, and just a great all-around dog. The only trouble with him is he's smaller, so he just doesn't have the horsepower to do things when the going gets tough, and that's where a 50, 60-pound English pointer really steps up.
That's awesome. And now, from my limited experience with hunt, I haven't hunted any Huns, as you guys call them, or Hungarian parses, or as I like to call them, invasive species. But with a goshawk, it's they are an extremely challenging quarry because they fly so powerfully and for so far. You got to get up. The technique that I heard from a guy who's doing it with success, like in California, or I think it's California, he has to get up, he gets up high, and then gives the bird the best advantage, so that the flights go downhill, and then the goshawk can really build up speed and try to hopefully overtake them and catch them. Is that what you're doing?
That's maybe what I like about flying goshawks more than anything, and more than I wouldn't say I like it more than flying falcons, but what I like about it that's different is that there's a lot of lurking and strategy and sneaking, and you feel like you're quite active in the process. And you'll hear the word fieldcraft used to describe how someone is in the field. And I think that flying a goshawk at game birds is the greatest test of fieldcraft that I've experienced in the falconry world. There's a ton of strategy involved, and your ability to perceive what you're witnessing and turn it into a viable slip, while also seeing opportunities that you can tell just by looking are not viable, or not likely to result in success, and then figuring out how to challenge the goshawk along the way with that success is one of the trickier forms of falconry that I've partaken in. Hungarian partridge can be caught on the rise with a good, strong, quick goshawk that knows how to do it. But if you want to be successful in the long run on Hungarian partridge as a quarry, you need a bird that's willing to go the distance. And I'm talking better part of a mile after these things at speed. They're not going to catch a Hun half a mile out and bind to it. A game bird is just too fast for that. And a goshawk with their long tail creates too much drag. They can't move as fast as a partridge can. But things change. A Hun slip into the wind and a Hun slip downwind is a totally different thing. If you come across a covey of huns and they've been digging in the snow for the last 3 hours and you can't get within 100 yards of them without them seeing you, that's not a great goshawk slip especially for a younger bird. But if you're driving down the road and a covey of huns comes flying across and dumps into a cattail slough, and you can get your bird wired up and out the door and be on top of those things in a matter of seconds, or minutes at the most, that's a fantastic opportunity to capitalize. And the best hun hawk, as far as goshawks go, the best hun hawk I've flown is my old wild male, the North American male. And that bird was the perfect balance of willingness to go the distance on the huns that went far, and also recognizing when he was close enough to a covey getting up that he could just snag him. Really smart. Yeah. Like, he knew enough that when the covey gets up, even though they tend to all look like they're getting up together, there's always one that gets up first and one that gets up last. And he was really good at launching after the first one and then switching over to the last one and snagging them that way. It's experience. And he killed, I think his best season, he probably killed 75 or 80 of them.
Jeez.
But man, it took a long time to get him to the point where he would kill them on the rise and he'd chase them upwards of a kilometer and you just track them down eating them. It's pretty remarkable.
Now, is the dog keeping up? Sorry, Aaron. Is the dog keeping up with the slip? Or because it sounds like it's a risky endeavor if you're doing it every day, day in, day out, slips that are a mile away.
When they go that far, you're really, really playing with fire, especially on the prairies where it's always going to cover. And if there's going to be a horned owl, it's going to be there where the flight's going. Never say never. I haven't had a goshawk killed by a horned owl that way yet. What I have noticed is that a goshawk in cover, one that goes into cover chasing a partridge that's actively trying to run it down and get up and go, and like they're really, really busy. I've seen horned owls when I get there. I've seen a horned owl and it's usually hiding because it sees that goshawk as a different threat to, say, a falcon that comes in and catches quarry in cover. Those are the falcons that get killed. They go into cover after a hun, they get it, and they're eating on the ground, and the horned owl just can't resist. But that goshawk that's still actively hunting is not nearly as attractive to a predatory horned owl. I think they're more intimidated by a goshawk than a falcon in cover.
Yeah. So. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was going back. I'm sorry to backtrack on this. You had mentioned the falconer who would chase rabbits and then bag his goshawk on a pheasant. Mm-hmm. What would you suggest to that person as an alternative?
Well, I don't think like there's an overall better way to do it. I think that I'd have to make the call on a daily basis. Like there might be the odd time where ending that hunt with a baggie is important to do. But I mean, we're talking about Harris hawks. They love to follow, just to follow, right? Like they'll go for a walk with you like a dog. They're just loyal that way. So I don't think there's any need to reward the fact that they're following you and participating. But you really confuse the bird when you say, here is a sure thing every single day. It's easy. It's a total layup. A bagged pheasant in the forest can't get away from you. But all these white rabbits running around, they're hard to catch. So the better approach to me is, if you have to resort to baggies, is to switch that bird's brain onto snowshoe hares and don't give it anything else to think about as being otherwise worth its effort. Make it and that's the same for catching Hungarian partridge with a goshawk, catching snowshoe hares, catching any difficult quarry. You're always handicapping yourself and your bird if you try to make it a generalist rather than making it a specialist on that hard quarry. Goshawks are quite popular because they're such great generalists, but the best ones on the hardest quarry are the ones that are given the chance to really figure that quarry out and not be distracted by other things.
So if you had a carcass for, let's say, a snowshoe hare, and then you saw good effort put in, and after multiple hair slips, but it couldn't connect, it's a young bird, tossing a snowshoe carcass out.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, are you thinking that confuses the bird or makes the bird think, oh, I can put in effort and then a dead one appears?
I think there'd be a time and a place for dragging a carcass or using a live baggie. I think if I have a word, again, I'm not a snowshoe hare hawker, so I'm sort of projecting my experience in other areas onto snowshoe hare hawking for now. But if the bird's chasing and it's just not connecting, you're almost there. You don't need to do a whole lot. You might need to do a bit of a weight adjustment, but more experience is probably what's needed. And then a baggie or a drag carcass might be a good reinforcement when the stars just aren't quite aligning right. But what you want to be cognizant of is that you're not doing something that distracts distracts the bird away from the target, which is snowshoe hares. And I've seen that even with guys flying falcons on huns, where they just take the pigeon thing a little bit too far, and they feel like their bird is performing well, it's going through all the motions, but it's starting to blink huns or stoop through the covey and not try to touch them, and then remount only to kill a sealed pigeon. And it's like, you're just delaying the process by giving them that distraction. It's not a good tactic.
It's true. And Hungarian partridge, you could just go to like the pet store and buy them, So it's like
not quite, not here. Anyway.
You have them, you have them at your fingertips. You can just place an order from China and you get like 50 of them in a box.
Some people use them as baggies. They're really hard to keep in captivity, so you don't see them a whole lot. But to me, where I live, they're in abundance. They're available enough that I can go out and make my hun slip really do anything I need it to, just by being selective.
Yeah.
It would be for training a falcon or a goshawk. But baggies, baggies are controversial.
To who?
To some people, not to me.
To Dr. Nick Fox?
I'm not going to name names, but there are parts of the world where
I know. No, I know it is.
You don't even talk about it in some circles. But my point is that you can use baggies too much. You absolutely can 100%. Take it too far. Yeah. And I see it now and then. And that's just, it's a problem for some people.
Yeah. The baggy thing is a very slippery slope.
Yeah. Even, there's some schools of thought on bagging imprint goshawks as they're coming up and really driving home the killing importance. And I understand the philosophy there, but the reality is they don't do that in the wild. The notion that adult raptors bag their young is a big stretch to me. There's stuff that happens that sort of could be construed that way, but it's not to me a big effort bagging young raptors. They learn to hunt organically. They learn to hunt on their own, and your job as a falconer is to give them those opportunities.
Yeah. I agree. The baggy thing screwed me up with my first goshawk, so I'm very...
Me too.
I'm very biased. I did so many bags that my bird was like, anything that moved with any type of like aggression or power or athleticism was like, oh, well, I don't chase those. I don't chase that. I just chase the friggin' quail that come out of this guy's pocket that flutter along the ground.
I hear it from the odd goshawker, places like California where they have the option of hawking black-tailed jacks and cottontails in the same habitat. And the problem being that some of these goshawks or whatever raptor you're using to hunt them learn the cottontails are just more manageable. They're easier to get a hold of and control, and they start blinking jackrabbits. I had this problem with that 24-year-old hybrid who became like hell on rooster pheasants, like a little 650 gram, 680 gram hybrid, killed roosters like it was his job most of his life. But in his first and second year, he would blink them. And so my philosophy was, well, I have the autonomy to go out and find rooster only slips. I'm okay if I go out one day and don't get my bird flown. I'm only okay with that for so long. If I go out on a particular day and all I'm finding is groups with hens mixed in, I'm going to pass those and look for that lone rooster or a group of roosters. And if he doesn't want to kill one today, we'll just come back tomorrow and he'll be hungrier, and we'll figure it out that way. So that's one side of the approach to making him kill roosters. What I could do to work against that goal is let him keep catching huns, let him keep catching hen pheasants, and let him decide that he doesn't want to kill roosters.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. It's like a whole philosophy, I guess, right? Like to get down that conversation where it's like, if whatever's getting up is getting up and he picks the one he wants out of it, like, yeah, some people would say, and I kind of feel this way, but I don't know if I actually feel this way. I'm just kind of like, who cares?
That's fair. And I've never had a problem with catching hen pheasants or catching huns, but I would like it to be that I decided to go after huns or I decided to fly hen pheasants and I really don't want a bird where if I've limited time every day to get out and go hawking, and if all I can find on that day is a rooster pheasant, I want the bird that'll kill a rooster too.
Right.
Just like I want the goshawk that, any female goshawk worth its salt is going to chase cottontails. That's not a hard thing to convince them to do, but yeah. I live in jackrabbit country. So you have to be a little careful not to catch too many cottontails with that goshawk that you're still trying to convince to kill jackrabbits. Now, once they kill jackrabbits and learn these things are they're tough and they get away and they fight. But when I hold on to them and I get some help, I get a great meal out of it. Then they start to get with the program. And the fewer cottontails they kill through that part of the process, the better off they are.
How big are those whitetail jacks up there?
Big. Yeah. They're really big. I the first year I started hawking them, I did a bit of an experiment because I see them hit on the highway all the time. I find them in places that I wouldn't hawk them, so I'll shoot them for hawk food. And I collected between the ones I caught, the ones that I shot, and the ones that I picked up on the road. They were averaging about 9 pounds. The biggest one I caught with a goshawk was just shy of 10 pounds, but I caught them as small as 6.5, 7 pounds. Jeez. It's quite a range.
Little guy.
The big thing about white-tailed jack. Well, there's two main things about whitetails that I figured out are kind of different from blacktails. One is that they develop a winter pelage, like they get winter coats that are like dove feathers or pigeon feathers. Like the hair is endless. And how many times I've had goshawks grab them and have a nice big scrap and a tussle, and there goes the rabbit, and the goshawks, they're mantling like, I've got it, and it's just nothing but hair. And it gets in their face and all that sort of stuff. The other thing is that they tend to try to run in a box when they get pressured. Unlike a blacktail that tends to want to get up and line out, this is what I'm told. The whitetails, when a raptor closes on them, they've got some real ninja moves. They're kind of more MMA oriented than just run for their lives.
Casey likes that.
So they like to fight. And I think the reason for those two things, for that loose winter fur and the inclination to run in circles and try to fight and dodge their way out of an incident, is that their primary predator is golden eagles out in the prairies. And a golden eagle doesn't have the maneuverability to keep with a jackrabbit that's running in a phone booth. And I have photographs and I've seen it in person where a wild eagle grabs a jackrabbit and just gets pasted with fur, and the rabbit runs away and the eagle's left there, rubbing its eyes on its shoulder. They're supremely adapted for that world, but they're not built for getting away from goshawks. And if you get the right goshawk in the mix, you can catch them. It's quite the trophy, but you can catch them.
Yeah, I'd love. Yeah, me and Aaron, maybe this we're thinking we gotta. I've never caught one. Aaron, you've never caught one either, right?
I've never caught one.
Yeah, I want to catch one.
I've had birds pull fur. It's tough when you come from the East Coast and you take your East Coast bird out to the prairie. It's just such a foreign environment for them. The wind is.
I get that. I've had a number of friends come out over the years with goshawks, and while I'm out, they'll have a bird that they catch ducks and rabbits with, and say, I'm going to come out there and catch a jack. And it's like there's a lot of prep work to build up to that point.
What would you recommend for somebody to do to prep for that?
If you're traveling from not jackrabbit country, wow. How much vacation time can you afford?
I know.
It's not, you can do things at home, like your rabbit lure obviously should reflect more of the jackrabbit size and color and all that sort of stuff. But further to what we've been talking about, I think if you have a plan to go out and chase jackrabbits, you need to not confuse that bird leading up to it by being successful on easier quarry. So if you have a bird that has been successful on easier quarry, that's all fine. But leading up to that trip, I would say, don't go out bunny hawking. Don't go duck hawking. Do what
Bag it on small dogs.
Yeah. Or if you have that rabbit lure, build it just whatever foundation you can for chasing that large, prey item in that environment off the fist. And then you're going to have some weight management stuff to figure out when the time comes. But they are catchable. And that's all I can say is they can be caught. How you get to that point is.
We need to devise a lure that's huge, like a rabbit lure that's huge.
I have
that has something like that can kick them and punch them, when they grab it.
When they catch it, just like like little robot arm.
Maybe it's got a big hydraulic arm in it. It's just whack.
I do with my rabbit machine. When my goshawks grab the rabbit lure, I make them fight it until I get there. So they take the slip, they catch the rabbit lure, and I'm pulling the trigger and making them bounce across the prairie until I get there. And they learn very quickly that me rushing in means I'm going to help subdue that thing. Yeah. Because you got to get there. You got to get in and help.
Sounds like you got a Bull X machine.
I do.
I got
greatest money I ever spent.
I got a homemade machine, and then anything more than like a couple ounces, it just like.
Oh yeah. No, I have a huge, my jackrabbit lure.
It breaks sometimes too, right?
It definitely breaks, but it's rebuilt for free by the maker, which is very nice. And in terms of financial investment, from 90% of what I need, a $500 machine versus like a $1,500 machine plus shipping, it's a no-brainer, and it's local. And he just builds them in his shop. Shout out to Boondocks Outdoors.
Yeah, that's cool. I've had mine for years. I haven't had any problems, but it was a big investment to begin with. But where I really found good value in it was in developing breeders. Because if you have an imprint goshawk that you want for breeding and you don't want to take unnecessary risks, especially some of these males that you're grooming to be semen donors, where you want to control the environment and not take those unnecessary risks, that rabbit machine is a very valuable tool. Yeah. I had one year that I was flying all 3 of my semen donors, and I would just load them up in the back of my truck, drive half a mile down the road to a park, set up the rabbit machine, boom, 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 one bird after another. And I was home in an hour, and everybody was flown and fed and done. That's where it has value for someone like me. But that's a purchase. Definitely.
Yeah, it's good. But it's like, just like with the baggies, like I talked about earlier, like that thing can really cause problems. Like you gotta use it almost less than baggies, basically, because they just learn that they can follow it. And then like after like less than a week of using it, like my one bird just started noticing like the string on the ground, and it would start like baiting at the string without even seeing, the lure hidden. Yeah. And then they learn to follow it. So you have to take the end of the machine, and you have to like put it in the brush and build like a little tunnel, because otherwise if they don't catch it, then what do? Slow it down so they get back up and chase it again? Like, no, like they need to learn, if they miss, they miss. Yeah. And then it's got to disappear, because if it doesn't disappear, it's just going to be a lure sitting up against the machine, and then your bird just casually follows it over there and just like lands on it, and it's like it does no good.
Which is it's counterintuitive for most people to think that I should go out and set up my rabbit machine to make my goshawk fail and not catch it. But there are times where you need to do that.
For sure.
Even with baggies, this male that I kept back last year that I fly at Huns, without access to Hun baggies and him being a chamber bird and me being away from home at the early part of the season, I had to start him on Huns when they were already pretty advanced. So I used some bagged pheasants just to lay the foundation. These bagged pheasants are really good quality. They'll fly 600-700 yards before they touch the ground. And that's the risk, is that he'll learn, because that pheasant has the ability to get up and go and stay going for a distance. But what they don't have is any of the finishing moves at the bottom end.
Right.
And that's what the goshawk needs to learn. Why you need to be urgent when you follow these game birds to cover is that when the wild birds get to cover, they're going to get away from you. So that goshawk needs to put the pressure on as best it can the whole way. And they don't want to. They're conservative and they don't want to, but you can convince them to.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, when you said that your best bird for chasing Huns was a North American, I'm not surprised by that, because you hear all kinds of cool stories of, like passage birds and like people witnessing like insane flights from like the horizon here, a speck, chasing a pheasant to the horizon there, a speck, like just in the evening or something crazy. Like I remember somebody on some podcast or some videos, like they were telling the story, and it was like, give me goosebumps. That like their bird caught, like their falcon caught, but then they were still flying. And then as they were flying, like they just, like somebody said like, oh, and it just like whipped over their head. And the pheasants were already like gone, like out of sight. Yeah. And this thing just was like across the prairie, like trying to fly them down.
I haven't seen it. I have a couple of friends who years ago were out hawking, and they bumped a group of sharptails. And sharptails, sometimes when you bump them, they just fly out of the country because they can go miles. And they're watching this flock of sharptails fly across the sky, hoping they go somewhere they can turn it into a hawking opportunity. And here comes this haggard goshawk out of nowhere. And they, by their description, this goshawk just chased these things completely out of binoculars, gone. Yeah. And they wouldn't do that if they couldn't be successful at it. An adult goshawk knows whether it can pull that off or not. Exactly. And they can. The trick is to convince your falconry bird that it can do that, and to maintain a level of fitness that allows them to do that when they think they can. Exactly. That's what's tough. And that's where I have some, it's a bit of an unfinished story here with some of these hack goshawks, because I'll see those types of behaviors from hack birds, But the question is, and I need to get more of these into the hands of people who will really put them through the paces, is whether the hacking makes that easier to attain earlier on or not. I'll tell you a little story that's sort of relevant. We used to have, it blew down about 2 years ago, but we used to have a big dead spruce snag that hung over the cliff amongst all this sort of hack stuff that's going on here. And the peregrines would sit up there. The goshawks found it and they would sit. And it's this very prominent perch that they can sit and kind of watch the valley. And the first year I had goshawks at hack, I went out to feed one of the peregrine boxes, and there happened to be a goshawk sitting in this spruce tree along the cliff face. And I'm at the box and I can hear a young peregrine way down the cliff, and it's a female, and she hasn't been on the wing for very long, and she's screaming bloody hell, like she's just getting beat up, and I can hear it getting closer and I can't see her. And finally I spot the underside of a tiercel peregrine, haggard tiercel peregrine, pulling up, and he rolls over and knocks her down and pulls up and knocks her in that, and eventually puts her in. But while chasing this young female peregrine, he passed underneath this dead spruce snag with the young goshawk sitting in it. And that young goshawk couldn't resist. He'd been on the wing for about 3 weeks, and he dropped out of the tree and launched after this tiercel peregrine. So as the tiercel peregrine leaves the young female in the bush, and peels off out over the valley, in comes this goshawk on its ass and pours the coals to this wild, haggard tiercel peregrine, and is on his butt like he's on a 12-inch string for several hundred meters. Like he's just playing with them. And this peregrine is looking over his shoulder. He knows he's got street smarts like nothing else does. He knows this thing is to be concerned about, and I got to get out of here. And he ended up chasing it about 600 meters across the valley.
God.
Before the goshawk finally decided, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going back. And of course, then the tables turned, and the peregrine beat up the goshawk. But that's the kind of all out, balls to the wall, full speed, every little ounce of strength you can possibly squeeze into a goshawk being put to use. And that's what I want to see in my hun hawks. So if I can hack a goshawk for 3 or 4 weeks, trap it, and give it a crash course in humans, dogs, and all the other stuff that comes with that, and get them onto huns when they're young, I have a feeling that's a good formula to make a really good performing hun hawk. I can only fly so many birds every season, so I haven't managed to get to the point of really testing that myself. But that's my hope for the future, is to see some of these birds really put to work and see what that hacking process brings to the table.
I'm sure it brings a lot by the sounds of it. Now I have a question for you, and you're actually, and it just popped in my head, you're actually like the perfect person to ask this question to. I was hawking in a wooded area. Like this is not like peregrine habitat at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm flying my tiercel, my tiercel goshawk that we pulled last year, late pulled, and we're chasing, well, with him, we're just chasing rabbits basically. So I got the dogs in there, and there's a giant swamp. Like I'm talking like a mile in diameter, like a huge swamp. And there's sometimes, there could be thousands of ducks in there, like at any given time during the migration. It's like loaded. And I found myself in the middle of it multiple times with, I got the videos of the birds swimming and they're floating and whatever.
Sure.
And, all of a sudden I hear a cacking going on above the trees. And my goshawk, I fly him from the fist or following, and he's following me. And then this tiercel peregrine like comes whipping through the trees, trying to take his head off, and like just kept making passes at him. And at first I was like, wow, this is cool. You don't see this every day. And then when like he ducked and like the bird was like missing his head only because he was ducking, then I was like, oh my, this bird's going to kill my bird right now. So I like get my glove out, and he's like a great little bird. So I just put my fist up, and he just instantly came down. And as he's coming down, I could see like behind him, and you could see the tiercel like coming in like on like as a bullet, like, and then like pulls up like, within the trees, basically like right above the trees, and then goes up.
Yeah.
But I just like, for the life of me, I couldn't understand. Like it wasn't like, I guess it was February, so he might be on territory, but like there's nowhere to nest there. Like there's nothing there. It's like woods and like some fields. Like it's very bizarre. Like I didn't understand why that behavior was happening.
Yeah, now they will develop territoriality even just on a food source, a winter food source. You'll see that. Okay. Like you've probably seen some of the footage from my buddy John is sort of known for being like the go-to guy for winter gerfalcon observations, killing ducks and prairie falcons and that kind of thing. And that's one of the things that he catches, is that there's a certain territoriality around these high prey densities. So you might have just stumbled into a place where that peregrine was relying on that spot to provide his meals every single day, and then suddenly you're there competing, and he just decides, I don't want to put up with this. I don't have to put up with this. Maybe I can make this sucker move. So that could have just been a matter of territoriality, but non-breeding related.
Okay. All right.
But I'm with you. Like I've watched them thread the needle through the woods like that, and you just go, what on earth compelled you to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
And going like 100 miles an hour on top of, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what the heck is this bird doing?
Yeah. It's amazing what they can pull off without getting killed.
And that does make perfect sense. That's like kind of what my initial thought was, is like, cause he came from over the swamp. Like I heard the cacking over the swamp, and then he came, and we were like 100 yards from the edge of the swamp. So it makes sense that he saw my bird like moving up or something. It was like,
yep,
you know, you're a threat to me, you're a threat to my food, and I'm going to bash you around.
Think about he's probably sitting somewhere most of the day that he can see that food source, and he's just waiting for his opportunity, and then you come along and screw that all up for him.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's how he sees it. That's how he sees it. And that's like these wild birds wintering, you know, killing ducks here in southern Alberta. If they're sitting around waiting for the ducks to come out, because they come out late and they feed in the ag fields and they go back to water, and that's the narrow window of opportunity, these falcons that are living on them will spend their whole day chasing each other around, you know, knocking each other off of power poles and establishing like, I'm going to be the one that's here when the food shows up, not you. Right. That's probably what that Tiercel peregrine had in mind. I'm here to eat. That means you got to take a back seat.
It makes perfect sense. Now, on that same note, having a breeding pair of peregrines in your vicinity of your hack site and hacking peregrines and goshawks, have you had any fatalities of the adults being not tolerant of the hacked goshawks in the area, just like cruising around?
I don't know that I've lost any goshawks to peregrines, and I've watched a number of interactions with territorial adults and my young goshawks. I think peregrines are a little reluctant to actually connect with one. I think if they can it's mostly the male peregrine that's going to be the one trying to escort an intruder out, and they're smaller and they're delicate, and they know that they don't want to hurt themselves. Yeah. So if they can convince a goshawk to leave by putting pressure on it, they don't have to kill it. And these young goshawks, when they get really pressured, even just by a merlin, their instinct is to just go in the bush and hide.
Right.
I've actually had peregrines here killed by, only one or two that I can think of, killed by wild adults. But in any case, the one that I can think of, I know there are two, I'm not remembering one, but in the one case, it wasn't the resident Tiercel that did the killing. It was one that was coming in to try to take the territory.
Oh, okay.
Those ones are dangerous, but you can't account for those. They just show up. They come and go, or they don't, and you have no control of that.
Yeah, a peregrine is a scary bird if you think about it. Like I know a bunch of guys that have had birds killed by peregrines. Like, like hunting. Like I could think of a story, a falconer down in Jersey City on the East Coast, which is like as heavily populated as it can possibly get. And he'd find these little strips of like phragmites along abandoned train tracks where like homeless people are, but there'd be like pheasants in there.
Wow.
And he'd fly his Harris hawk, and like he was like telling the story, is like his Harris hawk's like moving from like one building to another building, and literally just like a gunshot, like boom, just took it like right, like literally just snapped its neck, and then like that's the sick, like where they pull up and then they sky out and then they kind of look behind them. And his bird just fell like right into the parking lot. Like
it's dramatic. It's dramatic when it happens, for sure. They're very, very capable. And that's what we strive for, using them for falconry birds. That's why people like flying peregrines and other falcons, is that dramatic finish at the bottom of a stoop is just like, bottle that up and hook it to my veins, man. That's the cool stuff.
Yeah, I've never seen it, and I feel like if I see it, I'm going to want to do it. But I've never seen a large falcon on a stoop killing something.
Yeah, it's a sight. It's special.
I've seen them stoop. I didn't realize at the time that that's what I was coming out here for, and that's what's caused me to stay. I'll never leave this part of the world because it's just that is just too special to me.
So you moved there for falconry?
Essentially, yeah. I pretended I was moving out to go to college, which I did, but it was really the hawking opportunities that I wanted to get into.
And so now I had another question earlier, but so now you're out there and you live on this property where the hack site is, or you live nearby? Is this your full-time?
No, this
obligation?
is just short term. No, just so
Okay.
the property owners here, they've hosted me. They have a little spare house and they let me freeload here while I'm doing this work. But I live, like I said, about 6.5 hours south of here.
Oh, wow.
In very different countries. So I'm up here for about 7 weeks of the year doing this stuff. That begs the question, when we wrap this up, which is inevitable, will I continue to hack goshawks? Because I do plan on continuing to breed them. I have a couple of ideas where I can move the hack site for goshawks to, but our peregrine hacking will be done here in a year. It's going to wrap up.
Okay. And then, that's fascinating. So now
that's just tied to government money, I guess.
It's mostly corporate funded. Like people that the whole inception of this project was that there was a business that had a building that needed to be demolished, but it had peregrines nesting on it. So in order to offset the losses there, they paid for our hack. And that's kind of the sort of premise of this whole thing.
So it's like a fund that your paycheck comes out of.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
And the quail bill.
Yeah, exactly. We buy the peregrines, we buy the quail, and then I collect a very small fee, and I get to do this, enjoy it. But let's be honest, this is not a real job.
It's awesome. It sounds like a real job. Except I
either in school counseling or plumbing.
I wouldn't last long there though, because I would they would see a bill on there for like an albatus or a whatever.
It's given me some freedom to get a hold of falconry birds I wouldn't have had otherwise. I mean, even flying a wild hack peregrine that I've hacked myself, that's a pretty special thing.
Oh yeah.
Do that.
You can go out and buy a peregrine, no problem. There's a bunch of people that breed them, but to get one that's like hacked in that way, that's like next to impossible, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And in some cases, I've had the option to, I could trap one today, but there are 5 or 6 to choose from. Well, let's just wait another week and see which one's still around. And most people hacking don't have that choice. So I've been lucky here and there. I haven't flown too many of them, but I've been lucky to do it a couple of times.
Yeah. Now, another question is the landowner like a friend of yours that just like, they like the foxes around, they like the birds around, or are they getting like a check from this I'm assuming it's like a nonprofit or something like?
No, they've been super, super generous. These people have become like family to me. I've been coming here for 15 years and staying with them. And they've been, you couldn't ask people to do what they've done for me here over the years.
Right.
So no, they love having the falcons in their backyard. They sit on the deck, and anyone who comes and goes gets to sort of watch the air show. We have the landowners where I stay right now down in the valley, and then the landowner up top whose property we actually have the birds and the hack boxes on, and they're all pretty excited about having it here. But I can't even put into words how thankful I am for these people and everything they've done for us over the years. It's really special.
That's incredible. I mean, you can't even get permission to like walk across somebody's land these days, and like.
Yeah,
they got you set up in a guest house, and you got access to the property, building hack stations. I mean, that's amazing. That's good. Like, good on them. That's
it's really cool. I'm very lucky for that. And to be able to keep doing it down the road here or somewhere else is yet to be determined. But I have every intention of continuing to hack birds. It's just too cool to me to not do it.
I bet you if you offered up your services to like these big time like deer breeders that sell to the Middle East market, and they wanted you to monitor and produce the best product for the Arabs, you could probably get yourself a nice little job somewhere.
Yeah, we've talked about it. Deer falcons and money, it's a different world. Right. They can be worth a fair amount. And it's not for me to tell someone whether they should take that risk or not. I have maintained that this has been a very, very good hack site because our known mortalities are so few. So it would be a great place to experiment with that kind of thing. But again, there's some experimentation involved. And you start turning loose white deer falcons here, it might not go the same way that it goes for goshawks and peregrines. I don't know that till I try it.
I think you should try it.
If anyone out there wants to volunteer their
high white, One was it? What was that, Aaron? How many years ago was that? Where it was on the news? We still have not figured out who the breeder was.
The airplane full of.
No, that you just see that all the time. No, I'm talking about someone sold a Gier Falcon to the Middle East for $1 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those auctions that occur over there can yield some pretty high value birds. I think a lot of that is inflated by certain things that don't really have to do with the actual value of that individual bird. But I don't know. That's a world that's so foreign to me. Like I said, I thought about getting into breeding for that market some years ago, but I'm kind of glad I didn't, because it would have consumed too much of my life, and I've gone on to other things that I've enjoyed. So, but yeah, they do. Some of them, it sounds to me like there are some that are very particular that they need to have a wild hacked bird, not a barn hacked bird, not a chamber raised bird, a wild hacked bird. And I don't know how many breeders of Gier Falcons in the world are actually delivering that, but it comes with its risks.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely comes with its risks, especially one that's like pure white and like you work so hard to refine it and get to that point, and then now a golden eagle just like eats it for breakfast out on a hack station somewhere in the middle of the prairie. But no, I like the idea of it because I'm not going to say his name, but one breeder that sells to that market that I know fairly well, he's able to offer at least a good discount on goshawks, because he basically makes his money from the Falcons, and the goshawks is like he can be more flexible with pricing.
Sure.
Which is nice for us common folk that don't breed.
There's not. I mean, I can speak as a raptor breeder. I mean, I appeal to a different market than the one you're in. There's some overlap. Obviously, I've sent birds to the States, but it's a weird thing when the bird gets to a point of value that you make different decisions for it. It's one of the reasons why I have a handful of people over the years that have been confused when I tell them that my males and females cost the same thing. They go, well, how is that even possible? Females have to be more expensive. From a cost perspective, they don't take any more to produce. They might eat a little more food growing up, but when it really comes down to it, if you got out the pen and paper, the male and female cost the same to produce. And I don't want the perceived financial value of a raptor to influence who decides to fly that bird and whether that's a good falconry prospect for them or not.
Yes.
So back to the Arab market, as a person, I've flown Gier Peregrine hybrids for more of my life than not. And I understand that because of the Arab market influence, female hybrids are at the point of purchase are a valuable bird compared to males. I'd pay 3 times as much for a male hybrid as I would for a female. I have no interest in flying a female hybrid, but a male hybrid is like my staple. I need one in my life.
Yeah.
So if the price went up, I'd pay the price, I suppose, if I wanted to fly that bird. And I feel that way about goshawks. If somebody wants a female goshawk because it's the best bird for them, I think they should be able to buy that without getting taxed. And if someone has better quarry for a male goshawk, I don't want them to think, well, if I just spend a few extra bucks, I'll get the female, even though it doesn't make sense because it's somewhat better because it's more expensive. So
we were just having this conversation yesterday that everybody wants the female goshawk, even if they're not hunting jackrabbits or squirrels. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where it's just my opinion. I understand that, but I think unless you're hunting jackrabbits or squirrels, you don't need the female goshawk.
Yeah, a friend of mine flew a bird that I produced for years at mallards, like hardened winter mallards. And he flew a North American Finnish female that I made. So she would have flown at 1,150 grams or whatever. And he remarked and he really loved the fact that she could bind to a mallard over water and just carry it to shore. She never got wet in her whole life. It was just not a thing she had to worry about. But also he appreciated her from a management standpoint, just a really nice bird easy to get along with. So yeah, there are all kinds of different factors that you have to input to your own system to determine what's the best falconry bird for you. For me, I would like the totem pole to have cost being very, very low. I don't think you should ever decide what your falconry bird is going to be based on cost alone. I think
that's the problem. Yeah. A lot of people, they live in the East Coast. They have squirrels and cottontails and the occasional ducks here and there. But when they go out with their red tail, which is what they have and been flying before they're planning to get a goshawk, they're just going after squirrels. and catching some rabbits when they flush them, or if their dog flushes them, and they don't want to spend the $3,000-$4,000 on the female, so they get the $2,000 male because it's cheaper, and they can convince their wife easier, and then they get this little tiercel, and like all they're going after is squirrels, and then like or they're trying to switch over to rabbits, but they don't have the slips for the rabbits, so the bird becomes like useless because they didn't enter it because they don't have the slips to enter it. And it's like, if like you're saying, if they were the same price, they would have just been like, I need the female. The female's for the squirrels.
Yeah.
Or the breeder being honest with them. What are you planning to hunt with this? Well, I'm mainly squirrels, but I got some rabbits too. And then like the breeder's like, well, I got a bunch of tiercels sitting around. Well, yeah, tiercel will get it done. Tiercel will be fine. And then they're like, oh, really? You think so? Okay. Cause that's an actual conversation I had with a breeder. And I won't say his name. And that was my first goshawk. And then I got a little tiercel, and couldn't do anything with him.
Yeah. No, different strokes for different folks. But like I said, I have certain, as a breeder of birds that falconers might want to fly, I have control over some things and other things I don't. One of the things, I can control genetics. I can pick my breeders. I can pick how my babies are created and how they're raised. But ultimately, what the falconer does with them is on the falconer. And I don't want anything that I do as a breeder to influence how you approach your falconry. And if me structuring my cost in some way means that it makes you make the wrong choice of falconry bird, then I'm just not hitting my mark. That's just pointless to me. So I have a lot of conversations with falconers. Some people call me and they go, I don't even really know what I'm looking for. I just want to kind of look at options and talk shop. And I feel a sense of relief in certain people when I say, you're not going to pay more just because you want this bird or that bird. They're all the same. I want you to make your choice based on whether that bird's a suitable falconry prospect for you, because that's when you're going to have success, and I'm going to get the good feedback, and that's what it's all about.
Right. Which is going to make you look better as a breeder if you put the right bird in the right hands, rather than, I would argue that, I hate to say this way, but I think I'm right, as bad as it sounds. But I would say, if I had to guess, 30% of all the goshawks produced captively in the country and sold to falconers, probably only 30% of them are actually ending up like being good game hawks at the end.
Okay.
And I think I'm being generous, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and you're picking a number. I understand. It's hard to say, and I mean, everybody's measure of what's successful and what's not is different, of course.
Well, I just mean like just actually catching game successfully on a regular basis, like a weekly basis, catching one head of game.
Sure.
And I know not personally, and from hearing from old school falconers and old school like goshawkers and like their anecdotal evidence and like my personal anecdote with myself, and then from what I hear, it's like more often than not, a lot of people can't really get the goshawk to do anything, or something. They can't get it to that point. And it becomes aggressive or becomes fearful, or it just doesn't chase or won't chase, and it just becomes like this, and I just can't help but think that if breeders were like, dude, if you only have squirrels, I'm not selling you a tiercel. Like I'll send you a female. I don't have a female this year. I'll take a deposit for next year, but you should really fly a female on squirrels, whatever.
Or rather, my philosophy is like, I'll have the conversation with you and tell you, I don't think a male is a really great fit for you. And say, I'm sorry, I don't have a female in this particular case. And I would discourage you from trying a male for squirrels or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's your decision. And when it doesn't turn out, I can't be expected to apologize for that. Yeah. And that's something that I've been, again, quite lucky with my experience breeding goshawks for falconers, is that most of the birds I hear back from, or most of the falconers I hear back from on their birds have done well. The odd one you don't hear too much about, and you might hear something happen that was beyond their control and it didn't pan out. And that stuff happens. Goshawk's it's not a bird that you can do very well with if you're real casual or you have limited time. Like, you have to take them seriously.
Yeah.
But I don't ever want to let a bird leave my property unless I feel like where it's going, it has a pretty good shot of being successful. And I won't say no to somebody. I won't say no to somebody if they say, I want to try a goshawk. And even if I feel like it's maybe not the best fit for them, because everybody deserves their chance to learn.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to hear back from those people when it didn't go to plan. It didn't go as well as they had hoped.
Right.
That's another thing that's hard about being a raptor propagator, is that you have to let go of those birds. When they go, they go. And you won't hear me brag about goshawks that I've bred that have ended up in falconers' hands and done well as though I'm the one responsible for their success. I made the bird, but the falconer wears the badge of honor in the form of the falconry bird that's successful in the field.
Here's a perfect line. I bred the bird. The falconer made the bird.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys probably both.
Aaron's like laughing and rolling his eyes.
No, it works. I like that.
I'm a philosopher, bro.
You guys probably, enough people in the falconry world. You can probably imagine people where if you said, all right, I'm going to take the best bird I've ever had and give it to them, and they're going to fail because it's just not the right bird for them. Even though it's the right bird for you and you've had great success, it's not necessarily the right bird for the next person. And that's okay. They just have to figure out what is the right bird for them.
Right. Or their tolerance for dysfunction.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people's falconry is not the same as what it is for the next person. That's okay.
Yeah. Like a goshawk doing a goshawk little wig out or something like that. Like they just can't handle that. Or like they pull the bird. Yeah. They pull the bird out in the morning at a falconry meet and there's 40 people standing around the truck and the bird baits and chitters. Yeah. They can't wrap their head around like, I have to put my bird back in the box and try again in the afternoon. Like this is like, it's just who deals with this? Why deal with this?
They do require tremendous patience.
Yeah. Tremendous patience. It just is what it is.
If you're not a patient person, if you're the kind of guy who's, if my dog doesn't listen, I'm swinging my boot at it. You're probably going to struggle with a goshawk because they don't, like we touched on earlier, although there might be very rare circumstances where negative reinforcement has its place. For the most part, they don't respond well to that. So if you have a temper, don't sign up. Don't sign up.
Listen, I agree with everything you're saying, but I have a very bad temper, and you just have to be able to control yourself enough to not do anything stupid. Work. Yeah, you make it work. Right. That's good, Aaron. You make it work. Like you want to smash your head against the wall and like drive your truck off the road after a bad day. And, and it's like, you got to just control yourself enough until you can calm down and get over it. Like, cause I don't know any goshawker that hasn't gotten frustrated and pissed off and been really angry, like flying a goshawk. Like if you say that you've been flying goshawks for X amount of time and you've never like wanted to like just put your fist through your bird's face, like in the field, you're lying.
Yes.
Or you're like, you have like very low testosterone. I don't know. I'm just joking. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like a goshawk's it's going to push your buttons every now and then. But once you get through it, usually like once you get in a routine with the bird, then you just, know what you're working with.
Yeah. I learned very, I would actually give the credit to my first goshawk for giving me a crash course in how throwing a fit in the field does not get you anywhere. It really doesn't work for you. And I am absolutely capable of it. But I've, I guess, done this long enough to know now that if you don't bottle that up and save it for later and take it out on something else, your goshawk's going to suffer.
Yes.
They don't respond to that stuff well.
Correct. Yeah. And I just want to clarify because you brought it up again, and I just want the audience to, I don't want everybody to think I'm a psycho. I didn't out of anger pin my bird to the ground. I just it was either the bird was grabbing my face or I blocked it, basically. So I blocked it, but then I just was like, well, I'm just going to hold her for a second. And yeah, I was like, I guess technically from a psychological standpoint, I was having an outburst of anger, but I wasn't outbursting. I just held my hand there for 5 seconds and then released it.
I have been in that moment, and I can only describe it as almost a moment of shock. Like I didn't even think this was ever going to happen.
Right.
And I have to think for a moment on how to handle this, because your instinct as a mammal,
right,
when something threatens you like that, is to fight. And if you fight the goshawk at the wrong time, you're going to pay the price for it. So I've caught myself in those moments where, a bird's attacking me and I grab it and I go, am I making this worse or am I making this better?
Right.
Probably best to just get out of here and get away from it all.
Yeah.
Try again another time.
Exactly. Yes. No, I agree. I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I just don't want everybody think I'm like a psycho, and I'm not endorsing that type of stuff. I'm just saying. All I'm saying, and I've said this is all I'm saying, and I'm going to wrap up this little me trying to save myself from looking bad. In the wild, if a young female goshawk attacked the mother would not be like, "Oh, let's put her back in her box." The mother would like beat the shit out of her, and then that young one would either disperse at that point, or they'd fight to the death and eat each other. But so I'm just saying, in that moment, that split second, that literally less than 10-second interaction, it stopped the behavior from happening again.
So in wild birds, there are biological mechanisms to avoid that scenario ever occurring. When you watch baby birds interact with their mother, there's just an innate respect there, and you just don't fuck around and break the rules, or else you pay for it.
Right.
And I think what we tend to do with our falconry birds is we have a tendency to forget that relationship and also confuse the bird by extending the dependency period indefinitely. Like a falconry bird, like it or not, is dependent on you as long as you have it, no matter how successful it is in the field. So we're really messing with the brain chemistry of a bird when we incorporate it into a falconry scenario compared to a wild bird. But you're absolutely right. A young wild goshawk is not messing with its parents. They'll chase them for food, but there's something deep down in their DNA that tells them you're at a disadvantage here. That thing can set you straight if it needs to.
Yeah.
So, where a human falconer gets away with some of that stuff, that's debatable.
Yeah.
But I think we've all had our moments.
I think we've all as falconers at one point in time been there. And that's why I'm so like on board with like the Steve Lehman hand feeding, instill yourself as the parental figure of the bird because of that innate respect thing. And then, yes, the bird's going to want to push the boundaries, but then you can control the boundary pushing by not reinforcing the behavior. But when the traditional method is always being a sibling, because that's what you are. They're treating you like a sibling. They're acting like they're mantling to hide their food from you. They're going after you, like depending on, how it's raised or your skill level, whatever. But like, it does make a lot of sense to like force yourself at, I am the parent here.
Yeah. And I think there's some real merit there. I haven't experimented with that myself.
You should try it.
All. But I think this sort of leads us to an important point. And that is that, when you talk about things like food, like openly feeding an imprint versus not, while what you're proposing, feeding that thing and establishing a parental type relationship with it, that's laying a foundation. But if you make mistakes on top of that, it could be even worse because you've built that food association and that sort of parental position for yourself. And that's what's important. Like, yes, you can hand raise a goshawk or hand feed a goshawk. You can raise an imprint. You can raise a chamber bird. I can do a wonderful job raising a chamber raised goshawk and still screw it up. I know how it's possible. And I could screw up the hand fed bird that you might do a perfect job with. So it's a small component of a much bigger picture. And if you can hand feed and then build on that in a positive way without hitting the wrong buttons, then I believe it's doable. And there might be some truth to that notion that the parental relationship is a good starting point. I haven't done any of that myself.
You should try it. And I could put you in touch with a guy and Layman too, that it's the problem with it. This is my problem with it. I did it once fully all the way through, followed through. We're still doing it. She's outside. We're still doing it.
Yeah.
And it's you're basically signing yourself up for a lifelong commitment to follow along this curriculum with this bird.
But great. I think you put it as well as anyone could have.
And that's all it is. You signed yourself up that this is here. We created a pathway. I'm the parental figure. And now I have a mechanism to shape the behavior away by using, our relationship and this hierarchy. But like, if you just try to stop doing that one day, then like, it's just going to decay into like a tiger that just wants to kill you and eat you.
That's the problem. You take a nice young imprint and you raise it with no food association. And then you, when it's hard pen, just smash its weight down and get really careless with your handling. You're going to see all the problems that you thought were never there, they're going to come to the surface. And that's why I say I can take a chamber raised goshawk and raise it to arguably to perfection, and then pull it out and make certain mistakes and turn it into a total basket case.
Exactly.
So of course you want to start with the best slate possible, but how that bird turns out as a falconry bird, a lot of that falls on the shoulders of the person doing the falconry.
And the thing that I personally like about goshawks the most, and me and Aaron have talked about this, is that no matter what your curriculum is, no matter what your upbringing of the bird, it's never a static thing. It's never a painting that's painted and then you hang it on the wall while it's alive. That's not how it works. You're constantly painting the picture. You're constantly adjusting mistakes. You're constantly adjusting weight. You're constantly adjusting housing. With accipiters, it's a fluid thing that's going on. The whole thing, the husbandry, the care, the housing, the interactions, the slips, everything is fluid, which is nice. Yeah. And that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's where, that's why goshawks and we'll call it all accipiters, but goshawks specifically are just a whole different category for so many people, because they kind of just follow a different set of rules. And the rule set tends to mean that you need to make that commitment long term.
Yeah.
They're not a weekend warrior. They're not a bird that does very well if you just take them out hawking and then otherwise ignore them, especially imprints. You can't do that with an imprint and get away with it. So you do have to look at a goshawk, no matter the rearing, no matter the genetics, the color, any of that stuff, as something that's going to take a tremendous amount of your time and devotion. And that's why for a lot of people, it's such a quantum leap, from whatever they've done before.
Agreed. Yeah.
They're great when they're great, but they're a lot of work.
Yeah. And when they're bad, it's like being married, basically. It's like when it's good, it's the best. It's literally the best. You got kids, your wife, you're on good terms. But then when it's bad, it's like the worst.
The worst kind of bad. Yeah.
It's so bad. It's so annoying. It's so obnoxious, Yeah. A goshawk spat, like you got a bunch of people and you're at a meet and you pull your bird out and it's like chittering and like, and you're like, oh my God, there's rabbits crawling everywhere. Your bird's just blinking them because it's just petrified because of all the chaos. And you're like, why do I even deal with this? And then, an hour before dark, you pull her out and like the rabbit, and it's just like this 60 mile an hour friggin' boom squeal. And you're just like, it's just all worth it.
And then you get to go back to them. You get to go back to the meat banquet and tell everyone what they missed, and they'll never believe you.
No, but if you pull that bird, if you give that bird if you show some care and insight, and you put that bird away and you pull it back out, my personal experience. You tell me what you think, Steve and Aaron. What you think? The fastest I was able to like quote unquote like reset a bird, like where I really noticed a difference was an hour.
Yeah.
Like it spazzes out, acting completely out of character, put it away for 1 hour in the box, and then take it back out an hour later, and it's a different bird. That the fastest I've ever seen that is an hour.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to do that, or you not deal with that stuff?
Honestly, if it gets to the point where it's so bad I need to put the bird away, I'm probably just going to call it a day. Yeah. Because in my experience with the goshawks I've flown, fighting it only makes it worse, and persisting only makes it worse. Now, what you just described, though, if I can put the bird away for an hour and know that it's on weight, whatever upset it is something that I can control and is completely removed from the equation, and now I can take advantage of the fact that we're getting into low light and the day's getting long in the tooth, and that just goshawks get fired up by that, then I might break that rule. But my experience with the ones that I've flown is that if they're not tolerant in the field of the odd thing thrown their way that they're not expecting, they're probably not really that dialed in, and you need to go back and adjust a little bit. Yeah. So persisting in the field, again, talk about creating more problems, creating patterns, flying a fat hawk. That's a rookie move. I think.
What if you have a really obsessive personality and you're not allowed to fly your bird the next day because your wife is going to freak out? So the only way you're going to have any joy in your life in terms of falconry and your release is to fly that bird that day.
You put your goshawk away and go fly your Harris hawk or red tail. I would. That was a joke. Yeah, I understand the dilemma. I understand why it's not an option for everyone just to call it a day and go home. So you might want to persist. But my experience has just been that sometimes persisting in those moments is not the best move.
Yeah, I've done it in I've tried to fly my goshawk in the morning and I could tell it wasn't going to happen, and I'm just had put it up for the afternoon, come back hours later. But I've never tried it in an hour. Casey.
What I have done with birds that are a little more sensitive is if they have a moment like that, and because these partridge, when you're flying a goshawk at partridge, it's got to be at the top end. They have to be as strong as possible. So you tend to fly them borderline heavy, and it's not uncommon, especially where we live. We get some pretty big temperature swings. For me to have a goshawk at an appropriate weight, we're going out, everything's going well, and all of a sudden it warms up, gets real springy, and that bird's just weird about it. And it might not be that you have the time to correct the weight according to the temperatures. So you have to fly a fat hawk. And what I'll do on those days is if I don't see it coming and I go out and try to go hawking, and then I see the fallout of that, then I kind of go, okay, I'm smarter than this. I should have known better. I'm going to go do something else. And what I'll resort to are things like high jumps and restrained pursuits, really, really taxing rabbit machine stuff. I go out and a goshawk wants to throw a fit before I can even give him the partridge slip, and he's a bird that should kill partridge. Then I have the choice of feeding him, going home, or going home and feeding him. Or I can just pull out the rabbit machine, put some pulleys in the ground and make that thing zigzag up and down a hillside and make him just absolutely cook himself, or go home and do restrained pursuits until his wings are falling off, and then correct the weight for the next time out. And you're going to deal with with none of the problems, and all of the good stuff is going to come back. So yeah, that's really up to the individual falconer. Do you try to reset the bird in the field and hope that an hour in the box or an hour in the hood, removing of that distraction, is going to fix everything? Sometimes it'll work, but other times, and what's been my kind of philosophy is just give the bird time, call the day, and move on, and revisit it down the road.
That's because
I always I look at most of my falcon birds this way, but I look at goshawks as being very much a long-term project.
Yeah.
So
that's the rational adult way to look at it.
I was just going to say, he seems like a very well-adjusted human being speaking like that. Yeah, I just force the envelope. But there are many little different tricks. I remember I just thought of it after my mic just unplugged itself for no reason. I've noted, if I have a North American specifically that starts getting spazzy, but there's rabbits, we know they're going to flush, and the dogs are getting hot, and she starts getting all weird. I'll take a rabbit leg with fur on it out of my bag. And she's she's not even looking at it. And then when she sees it, and I'll tease her with it. And depending on the bird, sometimes I'll let her actually reach down and bite it. And then when she's biting it, I'll kind of pull it away and then hide it. And then you could see that she gets pissed. Or I'll take a whole carcass and just hide it and fling it in front of me. And when she goes at it, I'll do a restrained pursuit towards it. Bait, 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 bait. And I'll step past it as she's baiting, hide it, pick it up, put it in my bag like it disappeared, and then hold her up. And then you see she's like, and then the rabbit flushes.
Frustration conditioning is what that is. And it works really well with goshawks.
It can snap them out of it, I've noticed. It can get their brain in a different...
their brain away from whatever was causing the problem in the first place. Have you noticed, if you've watched any of these falcon races that occur overseas, have you noticed how before the birds go, the handler is usually priming them with some type of food? They're letting them tug at a pigeon wing or something, but they're kind of pulling it away and teasing them a little bit.
Yeah.
That's creating a bird that's kind of frantic.
Yeah.
In a good way, not a bad way, but frantic about I want to go. There's something I'm going to do. I'm not being allowed to do it. And then the second they're allowed to go, everything comes out.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you can figure out that with a goshawk, that's when you get the best performance out of them.
Yeah.
When you can figure out how to get them to the point where they're just everything's bottled up and they're anticipating an opportunity, that's when they give it everything they've got.
Exactly. And it's nice if you can just pull them out and they're fired up.
Yeah.
But every now and then they're not. And then it's you just call the entire day. You have one. That's why I have a bunch of goshawks, because if I have one bird to fly and it's that's why I have more than one goshawk, because if I pull one out and she's acting like that or he's acting like that, what am I going to do? Just go home? So I go try the other one, and the other
go
one,
home to your wife and kids.
Go home to my wife and kids. Spend time with my family. What are you, out of your mind?
Well, if you just go home, you tend to feel a little defeated. Like, man, I went out and I couldn't make it work.
Defeated.
I couldn't pull it off.
My whole night is ruined. My wife doesn't even want me to come home if I don't. She can tell the minute I walk in the door if I caught something or not. She thinks it's funny.
Yeah, because you're coming home defeated. Well, I get that, and that's one way to counter it is to have multiple birds and go, well, and that's what kind of where I come from is if this goshawk doesn't want to play right now, I'll go fly the Falcons. I was on my way to do that anyways, or whatever the case. So going home when the bird throws a tantrum is tough to stomach. I get that.
Yeah.
But in my case, it's often been, well, if you're going to throw a tantrum, guess what? You're just not getting out of the truck, and everybody else gets their shot, and you go home hungry.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's hard. It's just hard. I guess I just have like impulse control maybe or something. I don't know. I just I can't. Like it's hard. It's not healthy.
Right, fellas.
It's not healthy, man.
We're at about 3.5 hours of conversation, so I think
flew by, man. We could just keep going.
I think for my wife's sake, who edits it, we should probably call it.
Yeah. No, I think it was good. Steve, is there anything we missed with you? Anything you want to share? Or?
Oh, I could open a bunch more cans if you wanted to, and we could get into other stuff. But no, I think we've covered lots of the good stuff.
Yeah, you want maybe a future episode.
Well, I think after I order my bird from Steve, and then I go through the process of importing and how fun that is and the experience of it. I'm being dead serious. Then I think we'll do another episode and talk about it because you said it's been done, right?
We talked about that on the phone the other day, and maybe we should touch on it because there's probably a handful of people wondering. I have exported birds to the States. Here's sort of the breakdown. The process of exporting a goshawk from Canada requires me to have CITES paperwork. You guys are familiar with CITES, I imagine. And because it's an Appendix 2 CITES species, you don't need CITES import paperwork to get it into the United States, but you do need other U.S. Fish and Wildlife permits, Migratory Bird Treaty Act, Wild Bird Conservation Act. There are a couple of pieces of paper that you have to get. The only experiences that I've had trying to get birds into the United States for falconers that have been negative have been when the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service offices just have too many people on vacation at that critical time. So I've always said that if someone wants to get a bird from me, just make sure we're on the phone sometime in January, because if you can get the paperwork process started that far in advance, then everything else falls into place pretty nicely. But I will always say this. Exports, imports are at the mercy of bureaucrats, and they don't always live up to our expectations. That's just a reality. So I can say, yeah, I can send a bird to the United States, no problem. I have every legal authority to do that, but the paperwork can be a bit of a slog for some people. So you have to go into it willing to just navigate that, be a little patient, but ultimately you can get a bird into the country.
Yeah, that's good news. I wish it was that easy for like from overseas and stuff, because that's a whole nightmare. So is there quarantine required?
No.
Interesting.
No, that's a big difference. That's the big difference.
That's probably one of the biggest differences. So wait, so are you basically saying that if it's in a CITES Appendix 2 species, there's no quarantine required or no?
The quarantine requirement has nothing to do with CITES. It has to do with what countries are involved, and it mostly has to do with poultry movements.
Oh, okay. So
if you're because we in North America, we have these agreements between Canada, the US, and Mexico, because of poultry movements historically, there's already a framework for moving birds like raptors, which tend to just get chucked into the framework of poultry movements. Where when you want to bring in birds from other continents, it's a whole different matter, and that's when quarantine kicks in. So
that makes sense.
So fairly straightforward, but requires some time. And talking about CITES appendices, like Appendix 1 raptors, like peregrines and gyrfalcons, you need paperwork from both countries, the exporter and the importer, and that can take a while. But in your case, for example, if you wanted one of my goshawks, we need a Canadian CITES permit. We need a couple of sort of lower level U.S. Fish and Wildlife permits, and then you just have to execute the actual movement of the bird, and it's not that complicated.
You just put it on a flight, basically.
I haven't flown any birds across the border. I would drive or have someone come up and pick the bird up, which is actually best case scenario for me. Is if someone can even if they can just make it into Canada, I can ship it from anywhere, from where I am to anywhere in Canada, and they can do the export accordingly.
I can be in Canada in 10 hours. I can be in Canada in 10 hours, right?
Then I can have the bird there waiting for you.
right, let's do it.
Toronto is probably the closest for you.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's right there.
Toronto's a good one. You'd cross at Buffalo, and it's piece of cake.
Let's do it. Yeah, because I want one of those hack birds, those wild. That would be sick.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to make one. I'd love to make one for you. Be happy to.
No, you're gonna breed it, and then I'm gonna make it.
Oh, right. Sorry. I'll breed the bird.
Yeah.
I'll breed the bird and hack the bird, then you'll make the bird. I gotcha.
You're right.
I gotcha.
Right. And Casey gets all the credit for it.
No.
Hey, I'm fine with that. The
amount of effort that goes into wild hacking birds, that's like nobody does. That's ridiculous. Nobody does that really these days that I know of.
Yeah. I hope somebody on your side of the border does it. I mean, there's no reason that somebody couldn't.
Except for the fact that we are whatever. These are
we got a lot of problems.
There's a big market over here, and the demand has to be filled, and bills have to be paid. So they're less likely to take chances and risk with certain birds. And I don't blame them. Some of the birds, some I don't
blame them either. I don't blame them. And I understand, guys, that I'm different in that I've had my success breeding goshawks. Is the value in it to me is in learning more about goshawks, learning more about them as falconry birds, and getting them into the hands of people that are going to give me feedback that I can learn from too, and just share positive experiences. I understand the money side, though. I do understand that because it is a tremendous commitment to make these things.
Yeah,
it does not come easily. Like you've explained, it sounds like a handful of breeders on your side of the border had an experience this year where, in spite of your best efforts, the whole thing can fall apart.
Yeah.
So the prospect of taking your hard-earned, home-built goshawk and putting it in a box to potentially feed it to a horned owl or red fox is pretty terrifying to most people.
Yeah.
Especially if the alternative is someone who's gladly willing to pay for it and fly it.
Right.
It's a unique set of circumstances that have led to me being able to hack these things. I count myself very lucky.
So, dude, you sounds like you have an incredible lifestyle. It's like very fascinating.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. We haven't talked about flying passengers and any of that sort of stuff. We can get into.
Wait.
That's episode 2.
No. Wait. You flew passengers?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that moving to Alberta afforded me is we have some of the best falconry regulations on earth, really, to be honest with you. And to live in a place that has wintering jurors that are pretty accessible, I've flown a few of those. They're not my go-to bird. Talk about goshawks being hard. Jur falcons are tough. They're just so capable. They're really hard to make into good falconry birds. And I have all the respect in the world for people who fly them and fly them well. But yeah, we could go into all that sort of stuff. Snow goose hawking. Do you want to talk snow goose hawking someday?
So was it a passage, or you pulled an IS?
I've flown a few passage birds. We don't have them breeding in Alberta.
Okay.
They're not here in Alberta.
Okay.
So it's all passage take. And I flew a couple captive bred imprints, but I've flown a handful of passage birds. I've even caught a couple of jerkins, which is pretty rare. You don't tend to come across the males very often.
Really?
Yeah. But tricky prospect. So tricky falcon.
Aaron's trying to worm his way in to end it, but so I just want to.
Bro, I gotta be somewhere I was supposed to be somewhere at 4:30. That's an hour and a half away.
Oh, forget it. Okay. All right, Steve. No, we definitely got to do a part 2. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to convince maybe Aaron, because he's only got one goshawk now. He obviously needs 2. So I'm going to try to convince Aaron and a couple other people. And what we'll do is so when I drive up to Toronto, you'll ship over 3 or 4 or 5 of wild hack goshawks, and then we'll fly them, and we'll fly the.
I love the idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can try to make it happen.
I think
absolutely do it.
Yeah, it'd be so sick. It'd be so awesome. I'm gonna do it. All right, cool. So Steve, thank you so much. Aaron, I didn't realize it was so late, man. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
That's why Aaron's here, Steve. He keeps us because I'll just keep going. I can't.
I have the same problem. So
yeah. So.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
All right.
We'll keep in touch. Yeah.